Good morning, Antônio Pedro.
Olá, tudo bem?
Tudo bem? Como é que tu estás?
Muito bem, graças a Deus. Good morning, everyone. Karima, Una, Your
Good
Excellencies.
morning to you.
Morning, Pedro.
Are you back in New York?
I am back, yes. Just got back yesterday.
All right. Yeah.
Colleagues, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. We are live, so Karima, please take over and start us off.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Utku. Yes, I'm saying the number of participants stabilizing, so I think it is time for us to start. Dear participants, I'm delighted to welcome you to this Africa Day, organized on the margins of the high-level forum, high-level political forum on sustainable development. This event is organized jointly by the United Nations Office of the Special Advisor on Africa, OSA, the Africa Union Commission, the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, and the United Nations Development Program, UNDP. In July 2018, actually, the four organizers have launched this initiative to bring together, in the context of an Africa Day at the HLPF, to bring together high-level officials, mainly ministers and partners of Africa, to share good practices and lessons learned, and to see how Africa is doing, learning from how Africa is doing, and seeing what best to do to improve our implementation of the SDGs and the Africa Union Agenda 2063. Since then, actually, this event has become the place to be, to know more about Africa, with rich and enlightening discussions and recommendations. This year, the Africa Day is also a way to promote and popularize the outcome of the Africa Regional Forum on Sustainable Development, RFSD, and we will hear more about it later on. And it also linked to the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa Conference of African Ministers of Finance, Planning, and Economic Development, and the ministerial segment of ECOSOC. Basically, the idea is to try to build on the discussion that are taking place, so that we do not reinvent the wheel each time we meet, and we be able to build on the outcome of each one of these important events by connecting the dots of regional and global discussions. This year, our Africa Day will be focusing on harnessing water and energy for Africa's sustainable industrialization and inclusive economic transformation. It is a good place, actually, to discuss some of the outcomes of the Africa Union Summit that took place in November last year in Niamey, Niger, on industrialization and economic transformation, and to see how, through harnessing water and energy, we can speed up, in a certain way, the implementation of the SDG and Agenda 2063. And what is important to know also is that this year, for the Africa Agenda, we are at the 10th year of the implementation of Agenda 2063. So it is a good time to pause and think about how all these areas fit together and can speed up the process. We will hear from the various participants, the keynote speaker, how they see this field actually progressing in a more satisfactory manner. So rapidly, to give you an information about this online event, we will start, of course, with an opening session where we will have the organizers give welcome addresses, plus a keynote from His Excellency Ambassador Mushanga, Commissioner Mushanga, Then we will have a session on setting the stage with a number of presentations. And we will have a second session on best practices and experiences sharing in building forward better towards the Africa we want. And as you know, since we are in the margin of the HLPF, it is important for us to be able to hear from the countries who are presenting their VNRs. Then we will move to a third session, an expert panel, an interactive segment, and we will end up with some closing remarks and way forward. This event is can be heard both in French, English, Arabic, and Portuguese. Thank you to the organizers for providing us the opportunity actually to use the language we are most familiar with. We will not ask you to raise your hands, but rather to put your questions and comments on the chat, and the presenters will be able to react to your input. The event is also webcast on the UN OSA YouTube channel, and the concept note and the program has also been uploaded, so you can have more information about what is being to happen during the time we are spending together. So without further ado, since time is not really on our side, I would like to give the floor to the organizers for their welcoming address. And I will start with Mrs. Cristina Duarte, Under Secretary General and Special Advisor on Africa, for her welcoming remarks. Mrs. Duarte, you have the floor, please.
Good morning, Karim. It's a pleasure to see you again. Good morning to everybody. So I will deliver my remarks, my opening remarks. Excellencies, colleagues, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the co-organizer, it is my great pleasure to welcome you to Africa Day at the HLPF 2023. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all the ministers, deputy ministers, heads of delegations, dignitaries, and experts who have so generously set aside the time to join us today. Africa Day at the HLPF is your platform. This is where we hear from the African member states and their partners about the common opportunities and the ways in which they can overcome challenges in SDG implementation. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the world is largely off track in meeting the SDGs, and Africa is no exception. As the Secretary General has noted, if you are to achieve the SDGs, we need to succeed in Africa. The SDGs being reviewed in depth this year are a case in point. From the unfulfilled promise of industrialization to the 600 million people without electricity in the continent, African countries still face major challenge in advancing toward SDG 6, 7, 9, 11, and 17. However, these challenges are not exclusive to these areas or to these SDGs. They are structural problems that undermine efforts towards implementation of the 2030 Agenda and the Agenda 2063 as a whole. This is a major risk, but also an opportunity, because it means that with the right action, we can change the trajectory of African countries. How can we identify the right action? First, we need to learn lessons from the past. The fact that African countries did not manage to achieve the Millennium Development Goals, the MDGs, means that no resilience was generated in the continent. For the last 5 years, African countries have experienced severe setbacks due to COVID-19 pandemic and the food, energy, and financial crisis. These reversals happened because no resilience had been built. African countries did not have the tools they needed to react to this crisis with flexibility, mitigate the risks they trigger, and minimize their impact. Our priority, therefore, must be to provide African countries with those tools that will empower them to address future crises by creating resilience. Only in this way will be able to accelerate the implementation of the SDGs, ensuring that there will be no future setbacks. Creating resilience means, in practical terms, generating the policy and fiscal space that African countries need to manage their priorities, even in the face of a global crisis. This implies building institutions and ensuring the sustainability of financing for development. In other words, SDG 16 and 17. Africa is losing every year between $500 and $600 billion that could be leveraged to ensure the sustainability of financing for development. Issues such as illicit financial flows, inefficient public expenditures, and redundant tax exemptions are costing the continent $200 billion every year. Missed opportunities in the management of remittance for development investment, the mobilization of pension funds, and the structuring of carbon markets represents another 300 to 400 billion per year of missed opportunities. Both issues have a common cause: weak country systems, in particular, weak domestic resource mobilization mechanisms. We need to change the paradigm of financing for development and acknowledge that the mobilization of the financial resources that Africa is already generating is the key to the continent's development. Domestic resource mobilization is the game changer in SDG implementation. If we focus our efforts on this area and complement it with building reliable data and evidence-based policy frameworks, we will de-risk SDG investment and unlock sustainable finance for all areas of development. This is particularly crucial for advancing SDG 7. Achieving energy access for all in Africa will require massive investments that can only be possible if you unlock energy financing through effective institutions and DRM systems. Once unlocked, energy will act as a driver of SDG implementation, enable industrialization, digitalization, and the application of smart technologies that are indispensable to ensure the sustainability of our cities and resource management. But let me reiterate it once again. In order to succeed in any of these areas, we need to start by building resilience, investing in SDG 16 and 17, the only way to empower African countries to take the lead in development efforts. Thank you very much for your kind attention. I look forward to our discussion today. Back to you, Karima.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Duarte, for your very rich and enlightening welcoming remarks. Actually, I'm convinced that the participants will have found a lot of food for thoughts in general, but also to lead the discussion this morning around the theme that we will be addressing. And you have given us some ideas about how to seize the opportunity and to really act to change the trajectory. Now it is my pleasure to introduce Mrs. Ahuna Eziakonwa, who is the UNDP Assistant Administrator and Director of the Regional Bureau for Africa. ASG Ahuna is leading a program in 46 African countries, supporting them, working on the implementation of the SDGs and delivering better in terms of sustainable development. Mrs. Eziakonwa, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Karima, and greetings to everyone. Let me join my dear sister, Christina, to warmly welcome all of you to this high-level event, which we at UNDP are proud to be hosting along with the Office of the Special Advisor on Africa and our Economic Commission for Africa. We are very pleased that we have this partnership and with the African Union as well, which has built a tradition for an Africa Day at the high level political forum that really focuses on solutions to advance both 2063 and 2030 agendas. And I want to start by saying I subscribe to everything that Christina has said on this issue, particularly on the financing imperative. And it's in this spirit really today that we're discussing or centering the discussion on how we harness water and energy for Africa's sustainable industrialization and inclusive economic transformation. So let's take a moment to just unpack a little bit why these two aspirations of sustainable industrialization and inclusive economic transformation must be the development drivers of our time. It feels like only yesterday, ladies and gentlemen, that a virus shut down the entire world. And for Africa, there was an immediate and glaring exposure of the fault lines of non-investment in vaccine, for instance, and of course, medical industry capacities, basically what Africa needs to sustain itself in shock, in moments of shock. The war in Ukraine came in quick succession, really putting an accent on these fault lines, this time from the vantage points of food, fuel, and fertilizer. What rings true in all of this for Africa and beyond Africa is the primacy of industrialization and ensuring that in Africa, the pathway leads to inclusive economic transformation, but also sustainability. Water and energy and the nexus between them are no doubt enablers for accelerating industrialization for economic transformation, which is crucial for achieving the SDGs. So Africa, as most of us have been saying, has what it needs to trigger an industrial revolution. From the minerals that we all know are there underground to, in fact, the area of water. This is a continent that boasts of some of the world's major rivers, the Congo, which has 30% of the continent's water. We have the Nile, the Zambezi, Niger. And Africa also has freshwater bodies, Lake Victoria for one, but there are important scarcities. And as they say, for Africa is water everywhere and not enough to drink. And on both water and energy, we feel this is true. There is also energy everywhere, particularly in terms of natural endowment, but not enough to serve people. According to a research by UNDP's Africa Borderland Center, groundwater access is a challenge in 70% of borderland areas. And we have 270 million people who live in these borderland areas. And we know from UNICEF that girls and women around the world spend 200 million hours a day collecting water. On energy, as Christina already mentioned, half the population lacks access to electricity. And so we reflect on solutions today. And as we reflect, my central message is really that we must reach for scale. There are multiple projects that are out there and very good ones. And we have shown proof of concept in terms of models that work, but there is no scale. So it's important to build on some of those models and insist that the right financing levels are applied to bring this to scale. We have large reserves of groundwater, for instance, in the Horn of Africa, estimated at 8.5 million cubic kilometers of groundwater from our mapping. But this has not been tapped, and development investments and financing should find this water where it is and make it available both for water security in periods of drought, but also for strategic investments in industry. Through our Borderland Center with partners like the World Bank, UNDP established the Groundwater Access Facility, GAFA, to really map and invest in groundwater in Ethiopia, in Kenya, and in Somalia. And this facility offers knowledge, it offers expertise to map resources that can guide investments in the facility. Should the resources, the finances that Christina referred to come on board. The partnership also extends to key partners like governments, IGAD, UN, and civil society. With energy, as I start to conclude, I think the importance of, again, making sure that we realize that energy poverty, it's a negative in terms of addressing development challenges. If we don't achieve energy security, we can forget about achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. In UNDP, we're focusing on renewable because we see that's the future, but it's not sufficient. We still need to have a mix. And for the Sahel, for instance, our investments, they are starting to show results. In 2019, an additional 20 million people now have access to energy as a result of some of the activities we have there. And our mini grid program just launched last year is also contributing to scale access in at least 18 countries on the continent. But it seems, ladies and gentlemen, that where we must scale up these investments through multi-stakeholder partnerships is now. We must harvest both water and energy in quantities that can support industrialization. And I want to hear also talk about AFCFTA and the potential that brings to what we're talking about. And as I conclude, let me share just a few thoughts on inclusivity. I think it's important to continue to emphasize women and youth and putting them at the center stage in promoting Africa's industrialization. And that's why for AFCFTA, we have launched her AFCFTA. We want to make sure that women upfront can benefit from this One Africa market and all the industrialization and high productivity potential that comes with it. And we equally emphasize youth through our Youth Connect initiative, now in 25 countries, to support initiatives that are facilitating youth entrepreneurs and innovators. Finally, let us ensure that we're not focusing only on urban areas. I think uplifting rural communities through investments in agriculture and other labor-intensive sectors will be key in lifting millions of people out of poverty. But I'm quite confident that if we focus in these two areas in a meaningful way, we'll get there. So thank you, and let's debate on how we accelerate development here. Back to you, Karima. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ahuna, for your contribution to this discussion. Actually, again, it is more than welcoming remarks, since you reminded us how timely, relevant, and potentially impactful the theme we are addressing today is, if we want to be more efficient in our progress towards the achievement of the SDG and Agenda 2063. And you very rightly said that while there are a number of excellent practices, great examples, initiatives, we need to scale up and make sure that if we want to build a sustainable process, we need to learn from what has happened, what is happening today, and make sure that we learn from them and make them more impactful as they are in their limited environment. So thank you very much for your contribution. The third partner in the organization of Africa Day is the Economic Commission for Africa. So it's my pleasure to give the floor to my boss, the Acting Executive Secretary of the ECA, Mr. Antonio Pedro, for his introductory and welcoming remark.
Thank you, Karima. Your Excellencies, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to join you all today to mark the 6th edition of the Africa Day. This gathering offers us an opportunity to reflect on changes Africa must make to put us back on track towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals and Agenda 2063. As my predecessors have spoken already, and Africa has been disproportionately affected by global policy crises that have reversed hard-won gains. At the same time, the structural challenges the continent faced before the policy crisis have also been further exacerbated. These challenges stem from our excessive dependence on the export of raw materials. The good news is that there is no shortage of opportunities or African-driven blueprints and innovative solutions to enable us to achieve the SDGs and to propel us to the Africa we want. Strengthening our implementation capability is a sine qua non condition for success. We must rethink development and lead a transition that is climate resilient, truly just, people-centered, inclusive, and equitable to deliver on the promises of the two agendas. We can take cue from the outcomes of the African Union Extraordinary Summit on Industrialization and Economic Diversification, held in November 2022 in Niamey, Niger, which articulated a clear pathway to accelerate Africa's structural transformation, reduce our exposure to the vagaries of commodity price fluctuations, and chart a way forward for resource-driven and trade-induced industrialization, with the AFCFTA serving as a key catalyst. These will enable the emergence of strong, well-linked, and globally competitive regional value chains, expanded volumes of intra-African trade, an increased share of tradable goods in total exports, and with it, more productive and decent jobs, especially for our jobs. These are just a sample of the multiplier effects and co-benefits of such a trajectory. This roadmap was also reinforced during the Africa Regional Forum on Sustainable Development and the annual Conference of African Ministers of Finance, Planning, and Economic Development held earlier this year. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, harnessing water and energy for Africa's sustained industrialization and economic transformation is critical to move the dial. First, water is central to the continent's socio-economic development and an important enabler for the achievement of the SDGs and Agenda 2063. For example, if we harness the full potential of INGA, we can add more than 70,000 megawatts of clean energy, potentiating development and industrialization in many countries on the continent. The prudent use of water resources while maintaining the integrity of associated ecosystems to sustain its flow are essential. Leveraging Africa's blue economy is one such opportunity. For instance, through the Great Blue Wall Initiative, ECA, in collaboration with other partners, seeks to accelerate the development of blue economy in the Western Indian Ocean region. To this end, increasing marine protected areas from 8% in 2021 to 30% by 2030, conserving and restoring 2 million hectares of blue ecosystems and sequestrating 100 million tons of CO2 could generate 1 million blue jobs by 2030 and provide sustainable livelihoods for 70 million people. The Moroni Declaration on Island States and Climate Action offers relevant guidance on this subject for the forthcoming seats for conference. Second, there can be no net zero by 2050 without universal access to energy by 2030. Africa has abundant renewable and clean energy resources, but attracts less than 1.5% of global renewable energy investments, a luxury we cannot afford. We must strengthen regulatory and policy actions to attract more investments in renewable energy resources and address the continent's chronic energy access deficit, spur green industrialization, job creation, and contribute significantly to global climate action. For instance, by taking the lead in the green hydrogen space, Africa could produce over $1 trillion worth of green hydrogen a year by 2035. ECA is working with the Secretariat of the UN Climate Change High-Level Champions and other regional institutions to support the African Green Hydrogen Alliance members with green hydrogen potential. If realized, this could lead to an addition of about $122 billion to the GDP of member countries while creating about 4 million jobs by 2050. In the solar energy space, late last year, Zimbabwe signed a landmark Zimbabwe Solar Power Project, Climate Action Acceleration Agreement for 500 megawatts of solar power, which will serve as a catalyst for sustainable job creation and economic development in the country. This agreement signifies a new era of sustainable clean growth as a people-first public-private partnership under the regional UN Economic Commission guidelines for renewable energy procurement. I align me completely with the points made by my colleagues before that scale is of importance for us to achieve transformational change on the continent. We applaud the African Development Bank Desert to Power Initiative, which will generate about 10,000 megawatts of solar energy in the Sahel. Not only are renewable energy opportunities immense, but they are also lucrative. The overall value of the global renewable energy market is expected to reach close to $2 trillion by 2030. If Africa positions itself for just a 10% share of this, it could add $200 billion to the continent's economy. Third, in line with the African mining vision, we must ensure that our mineral resources contribute to indigenous growth, job creation, and moving up the higher value activities, moving up to higher level activities in global value chains. The DRC Zambia Battery and Electric Vehicle Transboundary Special Economic Zone being the most emblematic initiative. ECA's support in collaboration with Afrexim Bank and other partners towards the development of this value chain could be a game changer, opening up opportunities to enter a global market valued at $46 trillion by 2050. Last, we must increase the capacity of African countries to build high-integrity carbon markets. Carbon credits are tradable in global exchange markets, offering an incredible opportunity to generate over $82 billion a year in revenues for the continent's sustained development needs. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Africa's path to sustainable industrialization and inclusive economic transformation must be accompanied by the following actions. First, unlocking financing at the international level. This includes realizing the UN Secretary General's SDG stimulus plan and reforming the global financial architecture. Second, certain actions are needed on the domestic front. Christina has already elaborated on those. These include the development and implementation of effective industrialization and trade policies, as well as fostering domestic resource mobilization. Finally, Africa's industrialization agenda requires an ecosystem for transformational leadership. This will help fast-track socioeconomic transformation at the speed, scale, depth, and urgency required, underpinned by a whole-of-government approach, vibrant partnerships, coherence, and unit of purpose that strengthens Africa's agents. I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Antonio, Executive Secretary Antonio Pedro, for your remarks, for reminding us that there are a lot of things happening at the level of the countries, but also in the context of partnership among a number of countries that could also be a way to make sure that water and energy are part of the agenda, high agenda items, and speed up the process to the implementation of our goals. It is now my pleasure and honor to give the floor to His Excellency, Commissioner Albert Muchanga from the Africa Union Commission. Mr. Muchanga is Commissioner for Trade and Industry at the Africa Union Commission and will deliver our keynote speech today. Commissioner Muchanga, sorry, please.
Thank you very much, Director of Ceremony. You don't have to apologize. I'm both the Ambassador and the Commissioner, so there's no problem. And I would like to begin by saying that I'm in a very, very delicate situation. I'm in a hotel room in Nairobi, Kenya. The internet connection is very weak. So I hope I'll be able to finish my statement before I lose the connections. And I certainly salute all the ministers who are with us in this meeting, the president of ECOSOC, the permanent representatives and other ambassadors in the session, the senior management of the United Nations system, and the other participants. For the African Union Commission, we are very happy to be with you. We have got a very good partnership with the United Nations. And so when we come together like this, it's just very appropriate. And the topic is very, very key. Harnessing water and energy for Africa's sustainable industrialization and inclusive transformation. Why is it key? This is because the four critical issues of water, energy, green industrialization, and inclusive economic transformation are part of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and the African Union Agenda 2063, the Africa we want. And we are very happy that we have the president of ECOSOC here and other strategic partners, because this really gives the forum a universal character. And in this way, we're implementing the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal number 17 on the partnership for the goals. And we see this forum, or the outcome of this forum, feeding into the summit on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals that is going to take place in September this year, as well as the second 10-year implementation plan with African Union Agenda 2063, which we have started drafting here at the African Union. And as indicated by earlier speakers, for Africa to develop, the continent must overcome our current challenges, water and energy poverty. And these also feed into poor sanitary conditions, ill health, and low productivity. And of course, industrialization is very, very key. It's very, very important for the structural transformation of our continent. And we need an Africa that is globally competitive. Therefore, again, the issue of transformation, leaving nobody behind, comes to the fore. And of course, as we pursue all this, we should do it in such a way that our benefits must also be the benefits of future generations. And hence, the need for us to be smart and very, very sensitive with respect to environmental protection. And as we meet in this forum, earlier speakers have shown that we do so against a background that is not very, very encouraging. I will not go through the statistics, but all I can say is that the concept paper that is before us has been very, very well researched. And it clearly highlights the magnitudes of water insecurity, energy deficits, and Africa's commodity dependence. As I speak right now, many of our people depend on charcoal. Some depend on firewood, and in some extreme cases, they depend on dry leaves for cooking. And when we look at our factories across Africa, many of them operate below capacity due to constant energy shortages. And at the same time, we have rapid population growth. We also have rapid urbanization. And in the face of climate change, these are contributing to growing water scarcity in some parts of
Colleagues, have we lost the connection with Commissioner Mushanga? Yeah, it looks like maybe let us take 1 or 2 seconds to see whether he can reconnect. Can we hear from the technical team whether the connection can be reestablished? Utku or Daniel, can we hear from you? Shall we proceed and give the opportunity to Mr. Mushanga to come back later on?
Yes, Karim, I think this is Juliet. Please go ahead
Yes.
and let's continue, and then because he forewarned us about the connectivity. So let's continue and see what happens. Perhaps we'll be able to reconnect. We can go to the next speaker.
Karima, my apologies to interject. I've also been informed by the president of ECOSOC team that she will need to chair an HLPF session and will need to leave us shortly. So perhaps if we could move to her remarks now while we are waiting for the commissioner to reconnect, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Great. So directly to the president of ECOSOC, this is what you are saying?
Yes, correct.
Okay, which is actually, we are now at setting the stage, and for that, our first speaker will be Her Excellency, Mrs. Lashezara Stoiva, President of the 77th session of ECOSOC. We are delighted, Your Excellency, that you are able actually to be with us. I know that we have, one of the challenges we have is time management, as there are a lot of ideas to share. And I hope that we can hear from you before you leave. Please.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor, and it's a pleasure to be with you at this event. Unfortunately, I'm indeed pressed by time, but I will stay here to deliver the remarks, and then I'll rush to the other engagement. Again, as you know, it is great that we have the Africa Day within the ITO, the High Level Political Forum this year. It is an extremely important year for the High Level Political Forum, as we are in the midpoint of the implementation of Agenda 2030, and we are at the moment at the pre-summit stage of the SDG Summit that's coming in September. We also have the GI dialogue on financing for development in September, where the heads of states and governments will take stock of the level and ignite, hopefully, action on ambition around the 2030 agenda. This year, the forum is reviewing in-depth goals 6, 7, 9, 11, and 17. We finished with that exercise last week. We heard a lot of new ideas. But 2023 also marks the final year of the first 10-year implementation plan for the Africa's Union's Agenda 2063, which is another milestone in realizing Africa's development aspirations. As we know, we're off track with the implementation of the SDGs. The Secretary General's report on that points to that, but it is not all gloomy, because we do have opportunities. And the event you're organizing today and the statements we heard until now actually show and speak to those opportunities. Sustainable industrialization in Africa is crucial for promoting the continent's inclusive economic transformation, enhancing manufacturing value addition and output, and creating decent jobs, particularly for the continent's women and bulging youth population. This will in turn help harness the demographic dividend of the continent, supporting poverty alleviation and reducing inequalities within and among countries. To help turn the tide, African countries should pursue green and clean industrialization strategies that promote equitable economic opportunities and help address the climate crisis. This will require changing not only the narrative on Africa's development, but also investing heavily on capacity building through multi-stakeholder partnerships. Africa must strengthen the capacities of its human and institutional resources, as well as its infrastructure, with a focus on developing technical skills that would be sought after as the continent advances in its economic transformation. We need to recognize, however, that the continent needs to close an infrastructure investment gap of more than 100 billion annually. Large-scale upfront investment is required in Africa's energy sector to provide affordable, reliable, and sustainable access to energy to unlock the opportunities for sustainable industrialization, in particular by ensuring financial inclusion of women, youth, and small and medium enterprises. Ladies and gentlemen, Africa is changing its development narrative by launching ambitious initiatives that could act as game changers for the achievement of the SDGs and Agenda 2063. Such transformative initiatives, spearheaded by African stakeholders in partnership with the UN, give us the blueprint for the way forwards. And I would like to refer to three specific initiatives. First, African countries are harnessing their natural resource endowments to pursue value addition and industrialization, particularly in the context of the global energy transition. We have to note here the battery and electric vehicle initiative led by the governments of the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Zambia. Second, the Great Green Wall initiative in the Sahel region is accelerating and already yielding results. The emergence of the Great Blue Wall initiative to counteract the effects of climate change while unlocking and developing of a sustainable and regenerative blue economy directly benefits Africa's island and coastal communities. And third, the Sustainable Debt Coalition, led by the government of Egypt as the COP27 chair, aims to stimulate climate finance while at the same time keeping the focus on debt sustainability and reducing the cost of green borrowing for emerging and developing economies. We look forward to the outcome of the inaugural meeting of the coalition in Cairo in September this year, ahead of the SDG summit. With our collective ambition to power up the SDGs in September, we have an invaluable opportunity to mobilize support from the international community and all actors for transformative solutions tailored to the unique challenges that Africa faces. Today's meeting makes a valuable contribution to bringing the Africa we want one step closer. And I want to conclude by saying that the implementation, if we are to succeed with the SDGs and with the Agenda 2030, Africa has to succeed. So we need you to be successful, and we all have to work for Africa to be successful. Thank you very much, and I wish you a productive Africa Day discussion.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for your message and support to Africa. Definitely the success of Africa will be the success of all of us. While we repeatedly say that this day is Africa focused, Africa's development cannot be only inward looking and needs to be looked at from a partnership perspective, and it is important for us to also look at the relationships that Africa has with the rest of the world at different levels. So thank you again, President ECOSOC, for being with us and for delivering this message. Thank you. Excellencies, now we will move to a second presentation of this setting the scene session. Nous allons maintenant, et j'espère qu'elle est en ligne, donner la parole à son Excellence, Madame Garama Saratou Rabiou Inoussa, qui est la ministre de l'Environnement et de la lutte contre la désertification du Niger. Comme il a été dit tout à l'heure, le Niger a de manière remarquable abrité cette année le Forum africain pour le développement durable, le FRAD, le Forum régional africain pour le développement durable, au cours duquel un certain nombre des sujets que nous abordons aujourd'hui ont été discutés. Et je suis ravie de pouvoir donner la parole à Madame Garama Saratou Rabiou Inoussa pour nous faire part des recommandations du forum et des différentes idées qui y ont été discutées. Madame la ministre, êtes-vous parmi nous?
Oui, je suis avec vous, Madame Karima. Merci beaucoup.
Parfait, parfait. Bienvenue à vous.
Merci beaucoup. Je voudrais aussi profiter, en tout cas, pour féliciter, en tout cas, l'équipe technique de Daniel qui m'ont assisté parce que sinon, je n'allais pas vraiment pouvoir suivre en direct cet événement. Merci beaucoup. Madame Karima, je voudrais saluer et féliciter Madame Christina Duarte, secrétaire générale adjointe et conseillère spéciale du secrétaire général des Nations Unies, Monsieur Antonio Pedro, secrétaire exécutif par intérim de la CIA, Madame Ahouna, sous-secrétaire générale et directrice du Bureau régional de l'Afrique du Programme des Nations Unies pour le développement, Monsieur Albert Mouchanga, ambassadeur et commissaire qui malheureusement n'a pas pu finir, j'espère qu'il va nous rejoindre très bientôt, et aussi Madame la présidente de l'ECOSOC, Madame Stova. Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, je voudrais au prime abord saisir cette opportunité pour sincèrement féliciter le Bureau du Conseil spécial de l'Afrique des Nations Unies, de la Commission de l'Union africaine, la Commission économique des Nations Unies pour l'Afrique, ainsi que le Programme des Nations Unies pour le développement pour avoir initié, en tout cas, et impulsé l'organisation de cette journée, donc la journée de l'Afrique au Forum politique de haut niveau sur le développement durable. Et donc, en ma qualité de présidente du bureau du 9e Forum régional africain, vous l'avez dit, Madame Karima, je voudrais exprimer toute ma gratitude pour l'invitation à prendre part à cet événement d'une importance toute particulière pour notre région de l'Afrique. Mesdames et Messieurs, je vais encore saluer la pertinence de ce thème retenu, à savoir exploiter l'eau et l'énergie pour l'industrialisation durable et la transformation économique et inclusive de l'Afrique. En effet, ce thème nous permettra, en tout cas, certainement d'aborder au cours des échanges qui vont suivre les questions et préoccupations d'actualité, j'allais même dire qui sont cruciales pour l'Afrique, qui abrite, on le sait, 17% de la population mondiale, mais qui ne représente que 3,3% de consommation mondiale en termes d'énergie primaire, 1,1% de la production d'électricité et 3% de la consommation mondiale d'énergie dans l'industrie. Et donc, vous l'avez aussi souligné, la 9e session régionale africaine sur le développement durable qui s'est tenue donc, à Niamey fut sanctionnée de la déclaration de Niamey sur le thème de l'accélération de la reprise inclusive et verte après des crises multiples et la mise en œuvre intégrale et intégrée du programme de développement durable à l'horizon 2030 et de l'agenda 2063, l'Afrique que nous voulons de l'Union africaine. Cette déclaration, il faut le dire, a d'ailleurs en tout cas traité, entre autres, de la question de l'intensification du financement, et des partenariats pour l'industrialisation durable et la transformation économique inclusive de l'Afrique. Il me semble aussi ici important de partager avec vous effectivement certaines analyses et recommandations clés en lien avec notre thème central en vue d'alimenter donc les échanges. Ainsi, en rappelant les orientations stratégiques du sommet africain sur l'industrialisation et la diversification économique, qui elle aussi a été organisée à Niamey en novembre 2022, en faveur d'une industrialisation et d'une diversification économique inclusive et durable, la déclaration de Niamey a formulé plusieurs recommandations, parmi lesquelles, en matière d'eau propre et d'assainissement, il s'agissait donc d'accroître les investissements publics et privés dans le renforcement des infrastructures d'eau et d'assainissement et dans la gestion des ressources en eau, en particulier les eaux souterraines transfrontalières. Pour ce qui est de l'énergie propre et de coût abordable, l'industrialisation durable, le développement d'une urbanisation facilitant une croissance inclusive, tout en privilégiant une prise de conscience de la valeur du capital humain. Et aussi, pour ce qui est de l'industrialisation, l'innovation et les infrastructures, il s'était agi donc de faire un rappel de promouvoir l'industrialisation et l'exploitation des produits finis afin de tirer pleinement parti de la zone de libre-échange continentale africaine. De même, au titre des messages clés, en tout cas, qui sont ressortis de la session donc, du Forum régional africain sur le développement durable de Niamey, il me paraît donc utile de rappeler qu'un appel a été lancé à l'endroit de la CEA, à l'endroit du système des Nations Unies et d'autres partenaires, à continuer donc à soutenir les États membres africains dans la poursuite de l'industrialisation basée sur les ressources, y compris la promotion d'une chaîne de valeur minérale pour les batteries lithium en Afrique. Et aussi toujours en ce qui concerne l'exploitation de la science, de la technologie, de l'innovation et de la transformation numérique pour l'Afrique que nous voulons. Plusieurs mesures ont été proposées, dont entre autres celle d'investir massivement dans la science, la technologie et l'innovation et veiller à ce que les mécanismes de financement soient alignés aux priorités de développement de l'Afrique et que les savoirs endogènes et locaux soient pris en compte dans l'élaboration des modèles économiques et les travaux de recherche sur le continent africain. Et donc voilà, Madame Karima, à propos de ce propos liminaire, mais permettez-moi aussi d'aborder le pertinent thème de la journée qui est essentiel de prendre en compte le lien avec la pauvreté, l'énergie et le climat qui sont ancrés dans la position commune africaine sur l'accès à l'énergie et la transition juste, compte tenu en tout cas de l'immensité du continent africain, de ses ressources naturelles, des infrastructures qui sont disponibles et en tout cas de sa population. J'ose espérer que ces discussions que nous aurons vont nous permettre en tout cas de nous convaincre du lien inextricable qui existe entre l'eau et l'énergie dans ce contexte de changement climatique et le potentiel de développement de croissance inclusive qu'offre la bonne gestion de ces ressources pour booster l'industrialisation dans notre continent. Je voudrais faire remarquer qu'en agissant sur l'eau, l'énergie, dans une approche intégrée et durable, il est possible pour le continent africain de développer des industries, par exemple agroalimentaires, qui sont indispensables pour adresser efficacement et durablement la question de sécurité alimentaire et nutritionnelle de nos populations. Pour finir, Madame Karima, je voudrais vous souhaiter de fructueux échanges et délibérations tout en vous rassurant de l'engagement de mon pays en faveur d'une exploitation durable des ressources en eau et énergétique pour booster l'industrialisation en Afrique au service de nos peuples. Je vous remercie de votre aimable attention.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Ministre, d'abord pour votre intervention, mais également pour avoir si remarquablement organisé le forum et d'en avoir résumé les principales recommandations. J'invite d'ailleurs les participants à avoir accès aux documents du forum qui ont été très riches et qui sont un premier pas vers les discussions que nous avons aujourd'hui. Chers participants, je voudrais également vous demander de bien vouloir vous assurer que vos micros sont bien fermés. Nous avons eu un bruit de fond pendant l'intervention de Madame la Ministre. Comme elle a eu quelques soucis de connexion, je n'ai pas souhaité l'interrompre pour être sûre que son intervention aille jusqu'au bout, mais je vous serai réellement gré de bien vouloir vous assurer que quand vous prenez la parole entre vous, vos micros sont bien fermés. Avant de passer à la prochaine présentation, nous allons maintenant avoir une vidéo sur une initiative très importante pour le continent, notamment pour sa zone sahélienne, qui est l'initiative de la Grande Muraille Verte qui a été fournie par le ministère de l'Environnement du Niger. Donc, si la technique peut nous envoyer cette vidéo, s'il vous plaît. Merci beaucoup au gouvernement du Niger d'avoir partagé une illustration très pratique de ce qui se fait dans le cadre de la muraille verte. Et merci encore une fois, Madame la ministre, de votre participation. Je sais que, étant la voix de l'Afrique pendant une année et portant les messages du forum, vous êtes très occupée pendant ces jours-ci. Merci d'avoir pris part à notre rencontre. Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, I've been checking with our co-organizers whether Commissioner Mushanga has been able to reconnect, and apparently it is not the case, but we will let you know in case he is able to be with us again. As has been said during the various interventions we have heard, Africa has played a very active role in the organization of COP 27, since it is an African land that has hosted the conference, with Egypt remarkably organizing it and hosting it with a number of very challenging issues discussed. A number of important recommendations came out regarding climate action, among which, as you have certainly heard, a lot have been said about the loss and damage initiative and financing. We have the pleasure and honor to have with us His Excellency, Mr. Mohamed Nasser, Director of the Climate, Environment and Sustainable Development at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Egypt. So, Mr. Nasser, you have the floor, please.
Thank you so much.
You are muted. His Excellency, be unmuted. Thank you.
Is it good now? Can you hear me? Excellent. Excellent. Greetings from Bangkok, where we have been discussing climate finance, loss and damage finance, and financing for just transitions, and ensuring financial flows are consistent with low emission and climate resilient pathways for the past week. Let me at the outset thank you for the kind invitation to participate in this very important event. It gives me a great pleasure to share views from Climate Change COP27 presidency team in relation to the issues of water, energy, industrialization in Africa. This event is very timely. We are assessing the delivery of the SDGs and collectively working on climate responsive development pathways. This is in times with increasing climate impacts, increasing cost of finance, challenges related to food security and energy security. With that in mind, let me first express my agreement with the elements in the background note and the UN ECA paper, especially in relation to the assessment of the bleakness of the Africa story now, and on the other side, the huge and the positive potential for delivering a success story if the right instruments and the appropriate support are in place to harness the available potentials of our African continent. Excellencies, numbers are always crucial to set the scene for our discussion. In this regard, it is important to recall the following figures. On energy, Africa, which is 17% of the global population, has only 3.3% of the global energy consumption. At the same time, this is a continent with huge potentials for renewable energy from solar and wind and hydrogen. Even with that, and with that in mind, Africa still has only attracted 0.5% of the global investments in renewable energy, and still 600 million Africans have no access to electricity. While African countries pay 5% of their GDP for adaptation to climate change, it is very clear from the latest assessment on adaptation that Africa would need $500 billion to deliver on its adaptation agenda, be it on the water or agriculture or otherwise. On the climate change part, and as per the latest science, our African continent is confirmed that as most affected in the world by droughts, and it is the second most affected region by floods, with around 210 million Africans affected by climate impacts between 2010 to 2022. At least 60% of our African working population are employed in the highly intensive climate agriculture sector, and that 70% of our African cities are highly vulnerable to climate shocks, and the African continent still faces the worst climate-related security risks, and the majority of them relates to water. With that said, we also need to remember that the latest estimates of illicit financial flows out of Africa are in the scale of $80 billion annually. That the cost of applying the EU carbon border tax adjustment, well known as CBAM, is around 25 billion annually, which is almost 3 times what Africa receives as ODAs. Excellencies, in discussing water, energy, and industrialization and inclusive growth in Africa, we need to analyze the challenges our continent is facing and the potential pathways that allows for achieving our clear and legitimate development goals. It is clear that our continent is facing several challenges, including the increasing levels of debt, multitude of risks, be it economic or political, high rates of population growth,
You are still muted. Okay, that's okay now.
Yeah. Okay. Competing development needs between health, education, job creation, energy access, among others. All of these challenges are compounded with climate change impacts and challenges, from losses and damage related to climate change to the increasing requirements to comply with and deliver climate responsive actions, and the need to move quickly and at scale to reduce emissions and enhance resilience and shift to a more climate responsive development model. And the most challenge of all is to deliver with the same or even less international support and ODAs. Excellencies, as climate change co-president at COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh, we were very responsive to the calls from our continent. And through our work with all African stakeholders, we did deliver a leap in the right direction in Sharm el-Sheikh, where we made it clear that the international community needs to increase the share of renewable energy in the energy mix. We also made it very clear on the need to reform the international financial institutions to deliver finance through increasing the scale of finance, facilitate the access of African countries to the resources, and deliver through the extremely concessional instruments. We also delivered the funding arrangement, as Your Excellency have mentioned, including on the fund on support our countries to deal with the loss and damage, and clearly put forests, oceans, and water in the work of climate action. COP27 initiatives and vision were very clear. We need to enhance resilience of our African rural communities through initiatives like Decent Life for Africa Initiative in partnership with the Africa Adaptation Initiative and the United Cities and Local Governments of Africa. We partnered with the African Union Commission to deliver the initiative. So, can you hear me now? Okay, sorry. Affordable access to energy, and work with the UNECA to deliver debt relief, debt swap initiative. Excellencies, it is very clear that to deliver on our sustainable development pathways in this fast changing and challenging world, we need to be innovative, smart and quick to adapt the new norms and rules set in relation to development, be it with our development partners or those set in the rules of the international organizations and financial institutions. In this regard, it is extremely important to enhance our cooperation, coordination, and build on experiences of our institutions like African Development Bank, the UNECA, the African Union Commission, as our African partners and voices. In energy, we need to consider the innovation in moving to micro or mini grids with photovoltaic to deliver to our communities. We need to consider resilience of our rural and agro communities to enhance their livelihoods and deliver decent living standards and services. We need to be cooperative on the side in relation to cross-border ecosystems and resources and deliver cooperative, no-harm cross-border approach, especially on water and livestock grazers and communities. Excellencies, as we as Africans are collectively facing major challenges to achieve just transition pathways to deliver on our sustainable development goals, especially on industrialization, water, and energy. And only through our cooperation, coordination, and speaking with one voice, we will be able to benefit and deliver our promise to the current and future generations. I thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Shukran jazilan, Sayyid Mohammed Nasr. Thank you very much for your intervention. I hope it is not too late for you in the day, since you are from another part of the globe. And thank you. Congratulations again for the government of Egypt for the success of COP27, for giving the right space to Africa voice during COP27. We have been part of the whole preparatory process, and you have seen how keen your government has been in making sure that Africa's voice first is presented in a coherent manner, and at the same time is heard loud and clear. And thank you also for bridging actually the path between COP27 and COP28. I think that it is very important for us to continue on the same dynamics. So thank you very much, and nice evening to you.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, we are one of the youngest region of the world, and it is normal that we give the floor to the representative of the youth. They are our future, but they are also our present. And it is important for them to be fully involved in whatever discussion we have on issues that are of importance today and will be of importance tomorrow. So it is my pleasure to give the floor now to Mr. Ahmed Benin Wishong, Secretary General of the Pan-African Youth Union, for his remarks. Please.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm excited to be joining you from Burkina Faso, where the Leptako Gruma Youth Forum is taking place with support from UNDP. And I'm also happy to announce to participants here that the United Nations Office in West Africa and Sahel just ended the West African Sahel Youth Forum in Cape Verde. And we thank the UN system for continuously giving an opportunity to young people to find expression on the broader UN system. Excellencies, distinguished guests, fellow young people, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Executive Committee of the Pan-African Youth Union, our national youth councils and equivalent national coordinating mechanisms, and the larger youth development ecosystem in Africa, I wish to express our deepest gratitude to the United Nations and the Office of the Special Advisor on Africa for the continued effort toward amplifying youth voices and scaling up youth inclusion. On this Africa Day, it is an honor to be part of this August session on a crucial subject of great significance to the development and prosperity of our continent, harnessing water and energy for Africa's sustainable industrialization and inclusive economic transformation. This subject holds immense significance for the future of our continent and its people, and it is essential that we, as young people, are adequately equipped to actively participate in shaping and producing constructive outcomes. Africa's abundant natural resources, particularly its youth, water, and energy potential, have long been recognized as catalysts for economic growth, poverty alleviation, and sustainable development. However, harnessing these resources in a sustainable manner requires collective effort, innovative thinking, and a deep commitment to an integrated and inclusive process. As we gather today, we cannot ignore the pressing challenges that Africa faces: the underutilized potential of the young people, limited access to clean water and reliable energy for millions of our fellow citizens, hindering progress and perpetuating inequalities. But in the face of diversity, there lies immense opportunity to create quality of life for the over 600 million people without access to electricity and reduce the shortfalls to access to potable water across urban and rural Africa. Youths with our unwavering spirit, fresh perspectives, and boundless energy have a crucial role to play in driving Africa's sustainable industrialization and inclusive economic transformation, and we need all the support, skills, and tools to drive this process. Our innovative ideas, coupled with the unyielding commitment to sustainability and inclusivity, can shape a future that benefits all Africans and leaving no one behind. It is our responsibility to advocate for the sustainable management of water resources, to encourage the adoption of clean and renewable energy solutions, and to promote technological advancements that empower communities and foster economic growth. By harnessing water and energy in a responsible and inclusive manner, we can unlock the true potential of our continent and pave way for a brighter future. As young people, we seize this opportunity to collaborate, learn, and find creative solutions to the challenges we face. Our voices matter. Our actions can create a boomerang effect that vibrates far beyond the confines of this session. The Pan-African Youth Union, as the Continental Youth Coordinating Mechanism, welcomes collaborative actions and firmly commit to rally our youthful energies to support our states to meaningfully respond to the water and energy challenges Africa faces. This will be a direct response to the effective operationalization of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area and its consequent potential for industrialization and economic transformation. As I conclude, I wish to call
Have we lost Mr. Wishong, or is it only my connection?
We lost him.
We lost him, which is quite sad because he was making a call. So, and asking us to, so maybe we will give him the opportunity to write something in the chat. Our co-organizers are reminding us that we are running really behind our schedule, and we need to move to the second part of this meeting. So we will have a podium change since we are moving now to session 2. And for this session, we will give the floor to representatives of member states, especially those who are presenting their VNRs, their voluntary national reviews, either this year or have been done so recently, for the exchange of experience, best practices, but also for highlighting the challenges that still remain to be addressed, either on an individual manner or, jointly in the context of partnership. So we will have 4 presentation tabled for interventions, and I will move to French since the first 3 will be, I assume, in French. Donc, nous allons maintenant donner la parole à nos États membres, et nos co-organisateurs me demandent de vous rappeler que, vu la contrainte de temps et le fait que l'interprétation peut ne pas durer au-delà du temps que nous avons assigné à cette rencontre, il serait souhaitable que vous mainteniez vos interventions dans les 3 à 5 minutes dont nous avions convenu. Je vais donc commencer par donner la parole à son Excellence, Madame Judith Suminwa-Tuluka, secrétaire d'État au ministère de la Planification de la République démocratique du Congo. Madame la ministre, vous avez la parole.
Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs, Excellences, distingués invités. En représentant son rapport d'examen national volontaire des ODD ce 17 juillet, la République démocratique du Congo a mis en avant les défis auxquels elle fait face pour accélérer les progrès vers les ODD. Ce rapport met aussi en exergue les efforts entrepris en termes de réformes et d'actions d'envergure pour s'inscrire sur la trajectoire des ODD, notamment sur les questions de l'eau, de l'électricité et de l'industrialisation. Dans le secteur de l'eau, il y a lieu de noter que la RDC détient des ressources énormes en termes d'eau douce. Mon pays regorge à lui seul de 52% des réserves en eau de l'Afrique et de 23% des ressources hydrauliques renouvelables du continent. Malheureusement, suite à un certain nombre de contraintes structurelles auxquelles fait face ce secteur, contraintes auxquelles s'ajoutent plusieurs années de conflit, plus de 40% de Congolais n'ont pas accès à une source améliorée d'eau. Globalement, moins de 40% de la population en milieu rural ont accès à cette eau. La RDC fait face à 3 difficultés majeures qui plombent le secteur de l'eau. Il s'agit premièrement de la détérioration de l'approvisionnement urbain devant la rapidité de l'urbanisation avec un taux de 4% long, soit plus de 2 millions de personnes migrant en ville chaque année. Deuxièmement, les inégalités d'accès entre les grandes villes et les zones urbaines marginales d'une part et les zones rurales de l'autre. Ainsi que, troisièmement, le problème omniprésent de la qualité de l'eau. S'agissant de la question de l'approvisionnement en eau potable en milieu urbain, les insuffisances et les écarts qui se creusent entre les grandes villes et les villes secondaires sont directement attribuables à la concentration des fonds dans la société de distribution d'eau qui s'appelle Régie des eaux, société publique, qui avait le monopole de la distribution de l'eau et qui a du mal à intervenir au-delà de ses centres de services principaux traditionnels. Ainsi, pour offrir à tous de l'eau propre et exempte de contamination, le gouvernement a accéléré l'opérationnalisation de la réforme entamée en 2015, visant la décentralisation et la libéralisation des services de l'eau. Plusieurs textes réglementaires jadis absents sont à ce jour finalisés et le cadre institutionnel est en train d'être implémenté. Une autorité de régulation du secteur de l'eau vient même d'être mise en place, ce qui constitue une opportunité pour l'entrée des privés dans le secteur. Des actions sont aussi menées au niveau des provinces et entités locales pour l'implémentation des régies de l'eau locales et indépendantes. Dans ce même élan, une politique nationale de l'eau a été élaborée. Elle recommande des options de services pour les zones urbaines, périurbaines et rurales et esquisse l'avenir des agences sectorielles. Par ailleurs, en attendant les retombées de cette réforme et au regard de la crise de l'eau, principalement en milieu rural, le gouvernement a entrepris des actions d'envergure avec un ancrage au niveau local dans le cadre du programme de développement local des 145 territoires, PDL 145 en cycle. Ce programme va permettre de réhabiliter et de construire 447 sources d'eau aménagées et 3071 forages d'eau équivalent à plus d'1 million de mètres cubes d'eau par mois, couvrant plus de 15 millions de personnes, soit 2 millions de ménages, et ce, à moins de 30 minutes. Mesdames et messieurs, distingués participants, comme pour l'eau, le secteur de l'énergie reste une priorité pour la RDC. Le pays ambitionne d'accroître l'accès à l'énergie. Ce secteur constitue une des conditions nécessaires à l'atteinte de plusieurs autres ODD. Plus de 890 sites ont été identifiés et localisés pour des aménagements hydroélectriques sur l'ensemble du pays pour plus de 100 000 mégawatts. Le site Inga à lui seul concentrant plus de 44 000 mégawatts. Le pays détient ainsi un potentiel solaire et éolien significatif et son offre actuelle et potentiel d'électricité est donc à 100% durable. Paradoxalement, la RDC fait face à une offre très réduite de l'électricité qui atteint moins de 20% de la population. Entre 1990 et 2020, la capacité installée de la Société nationale d'électricité n'a quasiment pas augmenté, s'établissant à 2579 MW face à une population qui a triplé en 30 ans. La détérioration et la vétusté des installations et des équipements ne permettent d'exploiter que 55% de la capacité installée. Aussi, face à cette situation, en attendant de réunir les financements pour le développement intégral de Inga, le gouvernement a accéléré en 2014 la mise en œuvre effective de la loi cadre libéralisant le secteur de l'électricité. Dès 2020, des avancées ont été enregistrées avec la création de l'autorité de régulation de l'électricité et de l'Agence nationale d'électrification et des services énergétiques en milieu rural et périurbain. Ceci a constitué un réel tremplin pour le développement du secteur. Ainsi, la part du secteur privé, bien qu'encore modeste, ne cesse de croître, atteignant 13% de l'offre globale d'électricité, avec un possible déploiement à 27% à court terme. D'ici à 2030, le secteur privé pourrait couvrir près de 60% de l'offre de l'électricité. Cependant, le niveau de pouvoir d'achat actuel des populations, ainsi que les conflits dans certaines zones du pays, pourraient rendre le marché de l'électricité risqué pour de potentiels investisseurs. Afin de réduire le gap entre le milieu urbain et rural, le gouvernement a pris l'option de mettre en place des solutions adaptées et ciblées à travers des plans locaux d'électrification élaborés pour chacun des 145 territoires du pays. Ces plans définissent les options technologiques les plus efficientes sur base du potentiel énergétique de chaque territoire. Dans cette perspective, un fonds subside appelé Fonds Mwinda a aussi été créé. Ce fonds a pour mission principale de contribuer à la réduction de l'écart entre les taux d'électrification actuels estimés à 16% et le taux de 30% visé par le gouvernement à l'horizon 2025. Le fonds constitue ainsi un outil de de-risking qui permet de réduire le risque perçu par les investisseurs tout en facilitant l'accès aux produits des services énergétiques aux ménages et à faible revenu. Ainsi, ce fonds Mwinda joue-t-il un rôle catalytique en stimulant à la fois l'offre et la demande sur le marché. Des estimations sérieuses montrent que l'incitation directe du programme intermédiaire Fonds Mwinda, lancé en 2022, devra permettre à plus de 25 000 ménages supplémentaires d'accéder à une gamme variée d'offres des entreprises privées dans au moins 49 territoires de la RDC. Mesdames et messieurs, la RDC a connu une longue période de désindustrialisation. Les années de conflit et d'instabilité sont venues de réduire davantage le tissu industriel. À ce jour, malgré une reprise fort appréciable entamée depuis 2002, la RDC peine à reconstruire son industrie et le pays reste largement dépendant de son secteur minier. Il est vrai que l'exploitation minière a permis au pays d'enregistrer une croissance économique quasi continue de 2002 à 2015, mais cette croissance a une incidence limitée sur le niveau de vie de la population. Aussi, la dépendance de l'industrie minière reste nuisible à bien des égards au-delà d'être moins intensif en main-d'œuvre. La dépendance aux ressources naturelles expose le pays aux instabilités des prix avec des conséquences néfastes sur l'économie et particulièrement sur les plus pauvres. Pour diversifier l'économie et doter le pays d'un tissu industriel dynamique, compétitif, responsable en matière d'environnement et de développement durable fondé sur l'élargissement de la chaîne de création des valeurs pour plus d'emplois décents, le gouvernement s'est doté en avril 2021 d'un plan directeur d'industrialisation. Ce plan directeur prévoit la mise en place de 6 zones économiques spéciales à travers le territoire national réparties en 6 zones industrielles. Une agence d'opérationnalisation de ces zones économiques spéciales a été mise en place et un portefeuille de 12 projets est en cours de mise en œuvre. Les travaux de génie civil et de génie électrique sont déjà en cours. Mesdames et messieurs, il est unanime qu'il existe des liens évidents entre l'eau, l'énergie et l'industrie. Une gestion harmonieuse des interdépendances est cruciale pour un développement durable. Bien que des statistiques à jour et suffisamment désagrégées restent absentes, l'usage de l'eau par l'industrie attire une attention particulière du gouvernement. Des mesures sont régulièrement prises pour lutter contre les pollutions de l'eau par les industries. Il sied de noter également que la faible industrialisation du pays permet encore à une large partie des ressources hydriques du pays d'échapper à la pollution. La loi sur l'eau adoptée en 2015 a aussi institué des mesures très appréciées permettant de lutter contre la pollution marine sans toutefois méconnaître l'importance de l'eau dans le processus de production. Par ailleurs, la RDC a besoin d'une offre suffisante de l'électricité pour développer son industrie. L'industrie principalement des mines est la première consommatrice d'électricité avec 55% de la demande en RDC. La demande de l'électricité totale de l'industrie croît annuellement de 4%. Malheureusement, l'offre reste encore déficitaire, on l'a vu précédemment. La piètre qualité de l'électricité et les coupures des courants fréquentes entraînent des problèmes importants pour les industries et les services dépendants de l'électricité. Une entreprise sur 2 désigne l'électricité comme un frein majeur à la croissance et près de 9 sur 10 subissent des pannes. De plus, 60% des entreprises possèdent un générateur en raison de l'absence de fiabilité de l'électricité. Ainsi, pour une mise en œuvre efficace des ODD, le gouvernement de la RDC a pris l'option d'exploiter de manière efficiente les synergies entre les cibles avec un ancrage local. Mesdames et messieurs, pour terminer, je tiens à préciser que la RDC reste ouverte et engagée pour des partenariats divers et des échanges d'expériences avec les pays amis. Et je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Ministre, pour cette présentation, cette analyse franche, mais sereine de la situation dans votre pays et des mesures que vous avez prises pour pallier aux faiblesses que vous avez identifiées. C'était bien détaillé. Nous allons maintenant passer aux autres présentations et je voudrais vraiment insister sur la dimension temps. Je ne souhaite pas vous interrompre, mais j'aimerais que de votre côté, vous réellement mettiez l'accent sur les messages les plus importants. Je vais à présent donner la parole à son Excellence, Madame Madeleine Allengue, secrétaire d'État pour l'économie au ministère de l'économie et des partenariats internationaux du Tchad. Excellence, vous avez la parole.
Merci beaucoup, Karima. Je voudrais bien sûr tout d'abord commencer à saluer et remercier pour cette invitation qui nous est faite à cette session parallèle et à l'initiative d'une journée Afrique qui nous permette de proposer et présenter un peu les choses. Merci aussi beaucoup à Cristina Duarte que je vois d'ici sur le… Voilà. Merci beaucoup pour cette invitation. Merci beaucoup au bureau du conseiller spécial, à UNDP, à ECOSOC, à la CEA pour tous les efforts qu'ils font pour pouvoir avoir une écoute particulière sur le contexte. Moi, je suis en plus d'être secrétaire d'État au plan de mon pays, je suis la 3e vice-présidente du bureau du Forum régional africain du développement durable. Donc, notre présidente, la ministre de l'Environnement du Niger, nous a précédés et donc on est ensemble dans cet espace pour pouvoir effectivement faire un plaidoyer pour non seulement notre région, qui est le Sahel, mais également pour la particularité de nos pays. Donc, je veux la féliciter et l'encourager beaucoup dans tous ces messages qu'elle prononce et qui sont réellement de caractère très, très profond et urgent également pour nous. Donc, pour nous, exploiter l'eau et l'énergie pour l'industrialisation durable et la transformation économique inclusive de l'Afrique, c'est encore un espace, une plateforme importante pour pouvoir parler de nos difficultés et des avancées que nous faisons. Donc, pour nous, ces rencontres de haut niveau sont la possibilité, comme je le disais, de partager non seulement nos expériences, ce sont des expériences qui pour nous sont très réelles, parfois peuvent être très étranges pour ceux qui ne les vivent pas, et souvent très cruel pour les personnes qui sont touchées par le manque de ce service. Donc, on peut s'interroger également, hein, vous savez, dans un système mondial où toutes les techniques, où tous les services, toute la technologie est déjà fournie pour pouvoir avoir accès à l'eau, à l'électricité, et on n'a pas besoin de les inventer. Pourquoi, pour certains, l'énergie, l'eau reste encore un privilège, reste encore un luxe. Donc, il y a réellement une réflexion sur l'équité, la justice à réaliser également dans ce phénomène. Mais apparemment, on laisse la responsabilité aux États quand on a effectivement des solutions qui sont déjà présentées devant eux, mais on laisse les États dans leur responsabilité avoir accès à des choses. À ce type de service. Donc, comme vous allez le voir également, nous, le Tchad, nous avons déjà présenté notre rapport national volontaire en 2019, en 2021. Cette année, nous ne le présentons pas, mais l'année prochaine, nous allons le présenter. Et dans ces rapports, vous allez vous rendre compte qu'effectivement, non seulement le Tchad a un potentiel énergétique en concernant l'énergie, il a un potentiel énergétique énorme. On est classé 39e sur les 211 pays disposant de réserves de pétrole brut. Nous sommes un des 10 premiers en Afrique. Nous avons également une grande potentialité en énergie solaire et éolienne. malgré tout ce potentiel, tous ces chiffres très encourageants, seulement 8,4% de la population a accès à l'électricité dans notre pays. La biomasse représente 82% de la consommation totale d'énergie. Ça veut dire qu'on utilise une énergie vraiment très rudimentaire pour pouvoir effectivement gérer notre besoin d'énergie. Et en plus de ça, les énergies renouvelables modernes, chez nous, ont diminué même dans leur consommation de 1,5 à 1,2% en 2019. Mais nous avons des possibilités, bien sûr, de transformer grâce à une gestion beaucoup plus rationnelle, à une gouvernance beaucoup plus stricte, afin de pouvoir donner un accès un peu plus important à l'énergie. Donc, nous avons créé des partenariats non seulement avec la Banque mondiale, la BAD, ou des partenariats publics-privés qui nous prévoient que jusqu'en 2030, on aura un accès de plus de 30%, plus de 30% de la population pourra avoir accès effectivement à l'électricité en 2030. En ce qui concerne l'eau, notre situation est la même, le potentiel est énorme. Je ne vais pas répéter ce que tous, parce que l'Afrique a un grand potentiel, hein, donc on n'a pas besoin de répéter toujours, mais dans le contexte du Tchad, nos ressources hydriques, on les partage avec nos pays voisins. Donc la République centrafricaine, le Nigeria, le Soudan, tous les pays du bassin du lac Tchad, par exemple, on partage ces ressources en commun, et nous avons vu que ces ressources, depuis quelques ans, ont diminué leur potentiel de plus de 90%. Vous le savez, le lac Tchad a diminué sa superficie de plus de 90% par rapport à, il était de 25 000 km², maintenant il n'est que de 1500 km². Donc ça veut dire que réellement cette réduction et cette évaporation de l'eau peut nous coûter réellement très cher. Mais le Tchad également vit avec des eaux souterraines très importantes, et nous comptons justement sur l'exploitation et le développement de ces forages ou de ces puits pour pouvoir améliorer l'accès à l'eau. Vous le savez, nos populations donc vivent avec un stress hydrique très important. Je voudrais également mentionner ces derniers mois avec la crise soudanaise et l'afflux de plus de 225 000 réfugiés du Soudan sur le territoire tchadien à l'est du Tchad augmente le stress hydrique qu'il y a sur les espaces que nous partageons avec beaucoup de générosité. Vous le savez, nous avons adopté une loi d'asile qui permet de recevoir tous les réfugiés victimes des conflits dans les pays frontaliers. Donc, l'idée, c'est d'améliorer justement l'accès à l'eau. Et nous savons qu'avec cet afflux massif, comme je l'ai dit, de 225 000 réfugiés sur le territoire tchadien, on va avoir encore besoin de renforcer nos compétences et notre capacité afin de fournir, avoir l'accès à l'eau. Pour nous, quand on parle de l'eau et quand on parle de l'électricité, nous pensons même à un droit de l'homme. Il faut intégrer le fait que dans des espaces où la tension vers l'eau devient beaucoup plus réduite et la compétition augmente, ça veut bien dire que le droit de l'accès à l'eau est un droit primaire et qu'il faut absolument faire un plaidoyer beaucoup plus fort et voir comment effectivement cet accès à l'eau devient beaucoup plus fluide et beaucoup plus pragmatique en tout cas. Donc le Tchad, pour répondre à ça, donc, il y a cette défense de droit à l'eau ici. En plus de ça, le pays fait des efforts pour intégrer des systèmes régionaux afin de protéger également son accès à l'eau. Le Tchad est devenu donc le premier pays en dehors de la région pan-européenne à adhérer à la Convention sur la protection et l'utilisation des cours d'eau transfrontaliers et les lacs internationaux, qui est gérée par la Commission économique des Nations Unies pour l'Europe, l'UNECE. Donc, pour nous, il est très important qu'effectivement, cette question de l'eau puisse aller au plus haut niveau et dans les espaces les plus diversifiés possibles. Finalement, sur la question de l'industrialisation, le Tchad, comme tous les pays, hein, vous savez, on est rentré dans la même phase. Nous avons adopté notre plan directeur d'industrialisation et de diversification de l'économie, mais maintenant, nous sommes confrontés au financement de ce plan qui reste un des parchemins afin qu'on puisse effectivement aller vers la mécanisation, l'industrialisation, etc. Nous avons des bailleurs qui nous accompagnent. Je finis. L'Union européenne, la Banque mondiale, la BADEA et la BAD, etc., qui nous accompagnent effectivement pour cela. Donc, pour aller de l'avant, il faut accroître le soutien au pays pour augmenter les investissements, pour développer ses ressources énergétiques. Il faut gérer efficacement les ressources d'eau transfrontalières, il faut penser différemment, être beaucoup plus créatif et beaucoup plus innovateur dans cette gestion de l'eau. Et la priorité, je pense également, ça doit être l'écoute des pays, les priorités nationales, les priorités régionales, afin qu'on puisse les investir et leur donner une réponse. Donc, sur ce, je vous remercie beaucoup et on espère que cette expérience-là qui est partagée puisse être écoutée par tous et qu'on puisse trouver des solutions pour le continent africain. Merci.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Ministre, Madame Alengue, pour votre intervention, et c'est exactement la raison d'être en fait de cette journée de l'Afrique organisée en marge du HLPF, d'être à l'écoute de nos pays, être mieux en mesure de réagir à leurs attentes. Donc, merci beaucoup d'avoir partagé l'expérience de votre pays. Nous allons maintenant donner la parole à Dr Larba Issa Kobiagda, directeur général de l'économie et du plan au ministère de l'économie, des finances et de la prospective au Burkina Faso. Docteur, vous avez la parole.
Merci beaucoup, Madame, pour la parole. Je voudrais remercier donc l'ensemble des organisateurs pour avoir associé le Burkina Faso donc à cet important panel. Alors, le Burkina Faso, après effectivement 2019, où nous avons présenté notre premier rapport national volontaire, et s'est prêté à cet exercice cette année 2023. Et le rapport montre effectivement que le pays, à mi-parcours, a réalisé un certain nombre de progrès dans l'atteinte des ODD, mais les contingences du moment et la multiplicité des crises que le pays a traversées ont certainement impacté négativement donc la bonne marche de la mise en œuvre, et il y a nécessité donc d'inverser la tendance. Et la thématique donc de ce panel, et comme la littérature économique montre essentiellement que les ressources énergétiques et aquifères joue un rôle donc majeur donc dans l'industrialisation, particulièrement celle durable et la promotion de l'emploi, nous interpelle davantage quant aux efforts qui restent à faire pour permettre donc au pays de faire un bond significatif. Nous voudrions ici dire que de façon générale, les pays africains devraient davantage donc travailler à pouvoir fournir une énergie fiable et nécessairement à réduire aussi donc la dépendance aux combustibles fossiles, tout en essayant de promouvoir l'efficacité énergétique, ce qui serait donc une grande opportunité pour permettre à la fois l'industrialisation, mais la création donc d'un secteur industriel plus efficace, plus durable, mais aussi contribuer à la préservation donc de l'environnement. Spécifiquement pour ce qui est du Burkina Faso, lorsque je prends donc les deux grands points donc soumis à ce panel, les conditions climatiques donc de notre pays ne sont pas du tout les plus favorables pour pouvoir donc disposer donc à la fois de ressources en eau. Mais les études donc montrent effectivement que les ressources, notamment souterraines, en eau, sont disponibles, et il s'agit maintenant donc de travailler à pouvoir les rendre disponibles auprès des ménages. Et fondamentalement, à ce niveau, le gouvernement a fait quelques efforts, mais cela demeure en tout cas modeste au regard, bien sûr, donc des fortes attentes. Le taux d'accès à l'eau potable a été porté en 76,3% en 2022. Et celui de l'électricité, par exemple, concernant les ménages, il est autour de 63%. Mais cela, nécessairement, est lié à la fois à la capacité que le pays a su développer en matière, bien sûr, d'offres énergétiques, et surtout l'énergie donc solaire, mais il y a aussi donc l'importance donnée à l'énergie renouvelable donc dans la production globale de l'énergie qui a augmenté d'environ 24% entre 2016 et 2021. Mais il y a des fortes disparités et ces fortes disparités sont essentiellement liées au fait qu'entre le milieu urbain et le milieu rural, la préoccupation est très diverse et les inégalités donc se créent du fait bien sûr donc de cette disparité entre le milieu rural et le milieu urbain. Comme je le disais, depuis 2016, le pays fait face donc à une crise sécuritaire sans précédent. Et cette crise sécuritaire a augmenté donc le nombre de personnes déplacées internes. L'augmentation donc de ces personnes déplacées internes a entraîné des exigences en matière à la fois d'assainissement, mais d'eau, mais aussi bien sûr donc d'électricité. Et là, nous sommes donc dans une question d'abord de sauver des vies humaines, et cela est généralement préjudiciable donc aux actions donc de moyen et de long terme tendant à développer donc une industrie durable. Ce qui fait que le pays est obligé donc de réorienter une bonne partie donc de ses ressources pour chercher déjà des solutions à ces défis majeurs, et ce qui ne laisse pas donc l'opportunité d'investir de façon stratégique sur certains secteurs. Du reste, nous pensons qu'à l'étape d'aujourd'hui, pour le Burkina Faso, mais de façon générale pour les pays africains, il nous appartiendra donc d'optimiser les processus de production et d'adopter de nouvelles technologies propres. Cela pourrait donc accroître significativement notre capacité à produire et nous permettre donc d'utiliser efficacement la ZLECAF, qui est une grande opportunité pour nos pays, mais en même temps qui peut être donc une contrainte si davantage donc nous ne mutualisons pas nos ressources, surtout énergétiques et en eau. Il y a aussi le développement donc des énergies renouvelables. Pour ce qui est donc du Burkina, l'énergie solaire semble être disponible. Et nécessairement, on pourrait donc faire des résultats intéressants avec cela. Mais il y a des exigences et nous pensons que derrière les exigences, qu'il faut forcément accroître la responsabilité sociale aussi des entreprises, celles qui existent déjà et qui sont de grande capacité. Il y a aussi l'éducation et le développement des compétences qui devraient donc se poursuivre. Il y a des gros chantiers qui sont faits à ce niveau, mais le travail doit se poursuivre. Il faut intensifier l'innovation technologique. Il faut aussi intensifier donc la coopération régionale et l'intégration. Et surtout, comme l'a dit donc à l'ouverture, le représentant des Nations Unies pour les jeunes, l'aspect lié à l'inclusion sociale et la création d'emplois. Avec donc une forte population jeune, nous pensons que l'industrialisation durable est une grosse opportunité pour faire de l'Afrique effectivement donc ce mot générateur donc à la fois de ressources pour les autres nations. Opportunité avec l'industrialisation permettra de créer une synergie entre l'économie inclusive et l'industrialisation durable. En tout cas, je voulais, avant de terminer mes propos, dire donc que le Burkina Faso, dans le contexte actuel, fait face à un certain nombre de défis, et particulièrement les défis liés à la disponibilité de l'eau et à l'approvisionnement en énergie ne favorisent pas toujours un développement inclusif et durable. Et c'est dans ce sens que nous cherchons à établir des partenariats et des collaborations avec donc, les gouvernements, le secteur privé, la société civile, les organisations internationales, de manière à permettre de mieux mobiliser des ressources nécessaires pour les canaliser dans ces secteurs stratégiques, mais aussi de partager des connaissances comme nous le faisons à l'occasion donc de ce panel, mais mettre en œuvre donc des projets conjoints pour améliorer à la fois la gestion de l'eau et de l'énergie. Nous sommes donc disposés à toujours échanger dans ce sens-là et le panel est une belle opportunité. Je vous remercie, madame.
Merci beaucoup, Dr. Kobiakna, pour votre contribution à la réflexion à travers ce panel et je pense que tous les présents ont entendu votre appel et le but effectivement c'est d'abord d'entendre les pays, d'écouter les pays, mais également d'insuffler une volonté de coopération et de partenariat entre toutes les parties prenantes, que ce soit un partenariat régional entre les pays ou un partenariat avec les partenaires traditionnels du développement. Donc, merci beaucoup de votre participation. We are now moving to our fourth presentation during this session, and it will be by Mrs. Lois Mulube, Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Finance and National Planning of the Zambia. Madam Mulube, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I apologize. You may get some background sound. I hope I'll be heard. The 2023 UN HLPF and the UN Africa Day has given African countries, and Zambia in particular, an opportunity to review progress and gain renewed impetus for implementation and monitoring of SDGs. This is including SDG 6, 7, 9, 6, 7, and 9. Despite many challenges being faced by many African countries, including my own, there still lies opportunity to harness water and energy to achieve industrialization and inclusive economic transformation in the post-COVID-19 pandemic era. It is recognized that water and energy are key enablers of socio-economic development through deliberate efforts such as investment in climate-smart water and energy infrastructure, including efforts around improving the policy and regulatory environment to attract private funding towards these sectors. As Zambia, we have set ambitious targets to attain universal access to clean and safe water and sanitation services. This is being catalyzed by implementation of various initiatives to create the backbone infrastructure and services to support economic transformation through industrialization. This is critical if Zambia is to successfully attain the aspirations outlined in our 8th National Development Plan and the Sustainable Development Goal number 6. In Zambia, water has been prioritized as an enabler of economic sectors such as agriculture, energy, tourism, mining, and manufacturing, among others. Investments in these economic sectors are strongly being mobilized to transform and diversify the economy from the traditional dominant sectors of wholesale and retail trade, mining, quarrying, and construction, which largely account for about 50% of the country's GDP. There's a shift, particularly towards planning for increased investments in climate-resilient water storage infrastructure and maintenance, water quality monitoring and protection of aquifers and protected water sources, groundwater exploration and protection, and establishment of ground and surface water monitoring systems, which is crucial if Zambia is to attain national water security and economic transformation, and subsequently job creation. To ensure environmental sustainability, the country has also prioritized the restoration and management of wetlands, headwaters, and riverine, afforestation and reforestation, including the protection of water catchment.
You are muted, Luz.
Apologies for that. The government has established a sustainable financing mechanism, namely the Zambia Water Investment Program, as a partnership framework for the water sector, which is expected to facilitate mobilization of local and international financing for water supply and sanitation programs, included through public-private partnerships. The main objective of the program is to enhance job creation through gender-sensitive investments in water security, industrialization, and climate-resilient development. The implementation of these measures will be a game changer, and it is expected to lead to an increase in safe water to about 67% by 2026 from 58% in 2018 for the rural areas, and to about 98% in 2026 from 91% in 2018 for urban areas. Further, access to sanitation is expected to increase to 55% by 2026 from 37.2% in 2018 and to 90% by 2026 from 77.7% in 2018 for the rural and urban areas respectively. Investment in water and sanitation will support economic transformation, which will support the economic growth and translate into job creation, poverty reduction, and livelihood improvement for our people. Further outcomes are expected, such as improved health status likely to promote national productivity. I'll briefly speak to energy. Similar to water, the energy sector is also an enabler to development and actualization of our economic diversification agenda. This sector continues to thrive with investment opportunities and development of various medium to long-term energy projects, ranging from renewable and alternative energy, smart electricity transmission, and distribution grids, among others. In line with our national development framework for the country and its quest to attain SDG 7 on affordable and clean energy, the energy sector has positioned itself to respond to the goal of transformation of a green and circular economy through increased climate smart investments in solar, wind, and small hydropower plants, biomass, and geothermal energy sources. These sources will remain underexplored mainly due to constraints in financing and investments in supporting infrastructure such as smart electricity transmission and distribution grids and small-scale business value chains. Chair, as I conclude, more recently, the Ministry of Energy, with other government ministries, is undertaking measures to decarbonize the transport subsector through the support for electric vehicles and electric charging systems. This recent approach calls for technical and financial investments in responding to the huge investment outlay and the technical capacity requirements to actualize this vision. I thank you.
Thank you very much, P.S. Mulube, for sharing the experience of your country, bringing your perspective to the table, and for also letting us know how you are planning to address some of the weaknesses and the challenges ahead of the Zambia. Thank you very much for your contribution. With this, with P.S. Mulube's presentation, we are coming to the end of the session, I would say, on African member states' experiences. I will not tend to summarize it because there are a number of very interesting ideas that have been shared, but at the same time, I think that we have to congratulate ourselves to see that more and more our member states are having a very fair, transparent, open analysis of the situation of their country. They're not trying to say everything is great, everything is bad. They have more and better documented analysis, and this leads us to the importance of the data to illustrate our rationale and our analysis. Accent has been put on the fact that we are going from a difficult situation, a challenging situation, and if we want to reach 2030, definitely new measures, proactivity, creativity have to be among the keywords. Disparities, lack of equity has been part of the analysis that we have that have been brought to us. But at the same time, we have seen that when we have issues of hydrostress, at the same time, there is a potential, and the weakness may come from the ability of our member states to mobilize the water resources, etc., etc. Same for solar. I mean, most of our country are in solar area, and the move to renewable energy is very low, slow and low, actually, meaning that opportunities are there. We have to seize them, and partnership and SDG 17 may be one of the way actually to speed up the process. So I will not go into more details, but again, I would like you to join me in thanking our member states who have very openly shared their experiences. Before I close this session, and since we are talking about member states, we are going to a member state who is not from Africa, but is willing to support Africa. And I would like our colleague from OSA to play a video statements that we have received from His Excellency, Mr. Andrew Mitchell, Minister of State for Development and Africa in the United Kingdom. Colleagues, over to you.
Your Excellencies, colleagues, friends, it is a pleasure to be speaking at this Africa Day event at the United Nations High-Level Political Forum. As the SDGs reach their midway point, it is clear we are way off track. Extreme poverty, famine, the impacts of the climate crisis, and unsustainable debt levels are on the rise, whilst resource levels and international solidarity are falling. I know our African partners in particular are disproportionately impacted by the interlinked global crises we see today. This year, we must all recommit visibly and vocally to Agenda 2030 and to working in partnership to accelerate progress across all the SDGs. In so doing, we must reject the idea there is a choice between tackling poverty or climate change. They are two sides of the same coin. And that's why the UK, as announced on Tuesday, will publish a white paper on international development later this year, setting out a vision for global development that delivers on the SDGs, poverty reduction, boosting economic growth and tackling climate change. And further to that, that's why it's great to see this year's Africa Day focus on the critical role water and energy play in Africa's sustainable future. It is almost impossible to exaggerate the importance of water for the ecosystems on which food security relies, for clean water, safe sanitation and hygiene, and for all life on Earth. Energy, which relies heavily on water, is also vital in climate mitigation efforts, boosting economic growth and lifting people out of poverty. If managed in the right way, the water-energy nexus could be one of the key drivers for sustainable growth, for ensuring lasting food security, and for lifting people out of poverty. For example, through the Ayrton Fund, the UK government is providing up to £1,000 million to support innovations which can help unlock clean energy access for some of the world's poorest people. This includes £22 million for supporting energy systems in Africa through the World Bank's Sustainable Renewable Risks Mitigation Initiative, SRMI, and the African Development Bank's Sustainable Energy Fund for Africa, SEFA. But we also need to support countries in accessing and mobilizing the finance needed to invest in these vital sectors. And that's why the UK supports our African partners' top priority, international financial reform. I was delighted to be in Cabo Verde earlier this month to discuss this key issue with African friends and partners. We need multilateral development banks to sweat their assets further. Our international financial system needs to become more responsive to shocks so we can help poor and small countries at risk of natural disasters. And we must ensure that our partners in Africa have strong public finances through better tax collection, tackling illicit flows of money, and debt restructuring when it is needed. But we know finance alone is not enough. We need to understand how best to invest it to unlock sustainable, inclusive economic and social development, drawing on evidence of what works to drive progress across these goals. Britain does not have all the answers. We are committed to working with our African partners to do all we can to accelerate progress and ensure that no one is left behind. And with this in mind, I look forward to working in partnership on these shared objectives at the SDG Summit in September, at the African Climate Summit, UK-hosted African Investment Summit Conference, the Landlocked Developing Countries Conference in Rwanda, and other key summits in 2024. Thank you very much.
Great. And thank you to the government of the United Kingdom for conveying its position and message, and for all the support that is planned to be provided. We have a second video, I'm told, that was supposed to come a little later, but we will just run it now. So this is a video on regional battery mineral value chain in Africa. And once the video will be over, we will have a podium and moderator change. And I will very happily give the floor to my colleague, Mr. Utku Texos, who is a program management officer from the intergovernmental support team of the OSA. And as far as I'm concerned, just wanted to reiterate how delighted I was to take part of this very interesting panel. Actually, I was in 2018 for the first Africa Day on behalf of the ECA and IDEP. IDEP is the African Institute for Economic Development and Planning, and we are the training arm of the Economic Commission for Africa. And you have heard recurrently, actually, in all the interventions and presentations, mention made that if we want to move forward better and in a more sustainable manner, if we want to build resilience, we need to be able actually to rely on our human and institutional capacity. And therefore, it is in this context that IDEP is working, actually has been working for the last 60 years in supporting, strengthening the skills and building the capacities of thousands of African fellows. So thank you again for entrusting me with the moderation of this session. Let us move to the last video and then over to Utku. Thank you very much.
The project ambitions to allow African countries, mainly the DRC and Zambia, to invest in battery precursors, moving from a colonial model where they were exporting raw material to start adding value to this and moving up in the value chain for cobalt, lithium, and other battery material. Because the model African countries have been implemented is not the result we expected. Exporting raw material is not translated into robust and inclusive growth. It has not allowed to create massive jobs for these young people we have, but also it has kept African countries at the lower level of the value chain, therefore keeping a very low share of the wealth they are creating. This has started already. It started in 2021 when the countries actually engaged in the business forum in Kinshasa. From there, they've signed the agreement, and now we are moving toward a pre-feasibility study, which will be conducted coming the two next weeks, and then we move on developing the special economic zone. It's a Pan-African ambition. This is a call for other countries which possess raw material essential for a battery to join this initiative. African private sector and investors, this is an opportunity. Through the special financial vehicle, let's join this initiative and make it a truly Pan-African innovative investment.
Thank you very much for this very exciting video. First of all, I would like to thank Karima and all the participants so far for their very insightful comments and contributions to the event. It has been a pleasure to listen to you on this end. And in fact, this project, the video that we've just seen, is a very exciting initiative brought from the ground up, showing how the country leadership, with support from the UN system entities, delivers results on the ground. And it shows also the new narrative in action with the African member states showing us examples of a cutting-edge project, resource-based industrialization, and investing into the renewables and the future of the continents. So this video was courtesy of our colleagues from ECA, and I would like to also use this opportunity to thank them for providing us with this video. Let me quickly go into the panel moderation and a few housekeeping items, if I may. We are about 30 to 45 minutes behind schedule, but we will try to make up for some of that time in consolidating some of our questions and speeding up the interaction. We are going to add about 15 minutes at the end of this event. This is as far as we can go. I would also like to use this opportunity to thank our colleagues from ECA and the interpretation booths. By the time we are done, it will be 6:45 their time. So I would like to thank them for their flexibility as well. Now, let's move on to our panel. My name is Utku Texus. I will be having the honor to moderate this discussion today. I'm an economist at OSA, and I'm joined today by a very exciting panel. We have participants from member states, think tanks, we have UN experts, we have participants from other multilateral organizations such as APRM, and I look forward to a very, very exciting discussion. So allow me to move to our first speaker. I'll introduce the panelists very, very briefly, and I'll leave them with a question. As for housekeeping, I know we've discussed that we are going to have around 5 minutes each, but in the interest of time for the first round of interaction, I would be most grateful if you could keep your initial interventions to around 3 minutes, please. Alors, nous avons avec nous Monsieur Modeste Kakanda. Il est le coordinateur national de l'Observatoire congolais du développement durable. C'est une structure spécialisée du ministère du Plan en charge de suivi et examen de la mise en œuvre de l'agenda 2030 et de l'agenda 2063. Il a élaboré ou participé à l'élaboration de plusieurs rapports nationaux, se rapportant essentiellement au développement durable et à la fragilité, et participe activement dans le processus de planification nationale. Et son œuvre, dans le cadre de son dernier livre, Financement du développement durable de la RDC, diagnostic, enjeux et perspectives, il explore les voies et moyens susceptibles de permettre à la RDC de mobiliser des ressources innovantes, substantielles pour son développement durable, telles que portées par les objectifs de développement durable. Monsieur Kakanda, soyez le bienvenu. Voilà votre question.
Merci beaucoup. Je vous remercie de l'invitation. Merci.
Alors, votre question. Dans le cadre des examens nationaux volontaires présentés cette année, la République démocratique du Congo met un accent particulier sur l'importance de la sauvegarde des forêts et des écosystèmes dans la lutte contre le changement climatique. Dans le même temps, le pays ambitionne une transformation structurelle de son économie via une industrialisation plus poussée. Comment la RDC compte concilier ces deux objectifs qui semblent mutuellement exclusifs de protection de l'environnement et d'industrialisation? Dans ce scénario, quel serait le rôle attribué aux ressources naturelles et comment le RDC prévoit de continuer à protéger l'environnement tout en poursuivant son industrialisation et en gardant en point de mire les objectifs de développement durable? Vous avez la parole.
Merci beaucoup. La question est très pertinente. Effectivement, comme il a été relevé dans notre examen national volontaire, la RDC a élaboré son plan directeur d'industrialisation. Ça a été dit aussi à travers son Excellence, Madame la ministre d'État, ministre du Plan. Et le but, c'est d'accroître la part de l'industrie dans l'économie congolaise. Comme vous le savez, aujourd'hui, la RDC dépend essentiellement de l'industrie minière et compte tenu des spécificités de cette industrie, les retombées socio-économiques sont assez faibles. C'est ainsi que le plan directeur d'industrialisation prévoit l'implémentation des 12 zones économiques spéciales. Il y a aujourd'hui des projets qui sont en cours pour l'implémentation de ces zones économiques spéciales. En fait, en ce qui concerne des ambitions, concilier les deux ambitions, il faut d'abord noter aujourd'hui que la déforestation, ce qui est sûr, la RDC a de fortes ambitions en termes de sauvegarde de sa forêt, qui est cruciale pour l'humanité. Mais la sauvegarde de cette forêt n'est pas vraiment possible avec une forte pauvreté de la population. Parce que toutes les études aujourd'hui montrent que la déforestation de la RDC est imputable à plus de 85% à la pauvreté. Ça signifie qu'il y a une grande partie de la population congolaise qui dépend essentiellement de la forêt en termes de l'énergie, sur la part de fabrication de la braise chez nous. Une bonne partie de la population congolaise recourt à la braise pour la cuisson. Une bonne partie de la population congolaise dépend de la forêt en termes de nutrition, en termes des ressources, mais aussi l'agriculture, surtout l'agriculture de subsistance, qui est pratiquée par parce que la majorité de la population rurale, c'est celle-là qui est aussi à la base de la déforestation. Donc, pour une bonne sauvegarde des forêts congolaises, il faut lutter contre la pauvreté. Et nos données statistiques indiquent clairement que la pauvreté en RDC est intimement liée au chômage, qui est très élevé dans le pays. Et donc, pour regorger, pour diminuer l'incidence de cette pauvreté, il faut créer de l'emploi. Il n'y a pas de bonne manière pour créer l'emploi qu'une forte industrialisation du pays. C'est ainsi que le pays a élaboré son plan industriel. Ce plan industriel, certes, ce n'est pas qu'on veille à la durabilité des actions des industries, veille à ce que les actions des industries ne nuisent pas aux objectifs de la RDC tels qu'on contenu dans sa contribution déterminée au niveau national qui a été présentée à la COP26. Et donc, nous veillons à ça, mais il est vraiment crucial pour que le pays arrive aujourd'hui à atteindre ses objectifs de sauvegarde de la forêt. Il faut lutter contre la pauvreté en créant des emplois, surtout pour les jeunes, mais aussi en faisant en sorte qu'une bonne partie de la population qui dépend aujourd'hui de la forêt soit assistée et soit couvert par la sécurité sociale, par des mécanismes, mais surtout par la création d'emplois décents à travers une industrialisation très forte et poussée. C'est ainsi que la stratégie des zones économiques spéciales vise aussi, entre autres, de contenir l'effet de cette industrialisation sur des régions spécifiques, tout en veillant, en concentrant. L'effet de concentration est bénéfique, ça permet au gouvernement à la fois de contrôler, mais aussi à veillant des effets néfastes, négatifs, susceptibles de nuire aux objectifs du gouvernement sur le plan de conservation de la forêt. Et aussi, je vois, il y a aussi des ressources naturelles. La RDC veille vraiment à ces ressources naturelles. Nous connaissons aussi des conflits, surtout sur la partie, c'est entre autres dû à l'exploitation des ressources naturelles. Et aussi, c'est ainsi que le code minier qui a été revu en 2016 a apporté aussi beaucoup d'innovations pour que l'exploitation minière, l'industrie minière ne puisse pas nuire aux objectifs environnementaux. Le nouveau code minier a beaucoup d'obligations environnementales. Il y a des études environnementales qui sont obligatoires maintenant. Il y a des études d'impact. Il y a aussi des retombées au niveau local. Il y a beaucoup de ressources aujourd'hui qui sont retenues à la source, entre autres pour veiller à ce que la population locale bénéficie, mais aussi que l'environnement soit sauvegardé. Donc, je pense que ce n'est pas facile, ça, il faut le reconnaître, de concilier toutes ces dimensions-là, tous ces objectifs-là, à la fois sociaux, industriels et consorts, mais le gouvernement veille à ça et je vous remercie.
Merci, Monsieur Kakanda, pour votre intervention et pour exprimer ces liens entre les deux objectifs assez clairement. If you permit me, I'm going to switch back to English and introduce another one of our panelists. We are fortunate today to have Mr. Jean-Yves Adou, who's currently the acting director of the Monitoring and Evaluation Directorate of the African Peer Review Mechanism Secretariat, which is an African Union specialized institution on governance based in Johannesburg, South Africa. Mr. Adou has 28 years of professional experience, 18 at the international level in the areas of research, statistics, monitoring, evaluation, project management, regional integration, and development cooperation. So, given his background and the role he plays at the APRM, I'm going to ask him to elaborate on the role of peer review and peer learning in enhancing the VNR processes. This has been clear since the initiation of the reviews. We've always emphasized that. However, in the recent years, we are seeing growing examples of countries assisting each other in the review process. So in your opinion, how have countries been working together in Africa to report on both the SDGs and also the goals and aspirations of Agenda 2063, and what has been the APRM's role in this? The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much, moderator. Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. I'm honored to have the opportunity to address you today on the crucial subject of harnessing water and energy for Africa's sustainable industrialization and inclusive economic transformation. In my intervention, I would like to shed light on the significant contribution of the African peer review mechanism in the recent success story of African countries in implementing and reporting on Agenda 2063 and SDGs. First and foremost, through the APRM governance assessment reviews, countries can identify the challenges they face in implementing the SDGs and Agenda 2063 and propose actionable solutions to overcome these challenges. The APRM country review report also highlights good practices shared by different countries as they implemented a range of strategy and initiatives to address the challenges surrounding the SDGs and Agenda 2063 implementation, including in the area of energy and water. This exchange of knowledge and experience is invaluable in accelerating progress. The APRM process encourages also African countries to foster an enabling environment that attracts investment, promote innovation, and ensure the equitable distribution of resources. By addressing socioeconomic challenges and highlighting the contribution of the energy and water sectors to building resilient society in Africa, APRM also APRM assessment methodology also, and the survey has been revised to include most SDGs targets, further enhancing the alignment of national effort. And secondly, I can say that the APRM also serves as a platform, and this mandate has been given since 2017. So APRM serves as a platform for sharing best practices, experiences, and knowledge across African countries. The APRM Continental Platform on Voluntary National Reviews and Agenda 2063 Domestication and Implementation is one of the SDG accelerators in Africa. And we're having at least 2 meetings where countries can share their experiences. As I said, the APRM Continental Platform on VNR and Agenda 2060 Domestication and Implementation is one of the SDG accelerators in Africa, significantly contributing to harnessing energy and water for sustainable industrialization and inclusive economic transformation. Through this platform, countries engage in peer learning and policy dialogue, enabling the country to learn from one another's experiences. The Africa Peer Review Mechanism also provides capacity building and training in monitoring and reporting for country in need. And we are doing this in collaboration with UNECA and the African Union Commission. Over the past 5 years, the APRM has trained over 300 national experts from across the continent in monitoring and reporting tools. And these tools include also the UNECA integrated tool to report on both Agenda 2063 and Agenda 2030. Approximately 20 countries have already benefited from these tools in conjunction with the APRM reviews. Additionally, the APRM collaborate also with partners such as African Development Bank, the Islamic Development Bank, and the South-South Cooperation partners to assist African countries in promoting the implementation and reporting on SDGs and Agenda 2063. And we are having a South-South Cooperation Forum every year. And the last forum was held in Uganda this year. In conclusion, I can confidently say that Africa is on a transformative path toward sustainable industrialization and inclusive economic transformation. The APRM has played a significant role in providing a guiding framework, capacity building through training, and a platform for addressing the challenges of SDGs and Agenda 2063 implementation and reporting. And this includes the area of water and energy resources. APRM remains committed to supporting any countries with its assessment reviews, and also the training on monitoring and reporting and the preparation of the voluntary national reviews. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Director Adu. We also for your intervention, where you mentioned the role of fostering and enabling environments by addressing socioeconomic challenges, especially on the field of energy and water, which is a topic that also resonates with us in-house, because we've been also conducting some research in this field over the past couple of months, and also highlighting the role of capacity building and the alignment of these national efforts with the joint implementation of 2030 and 2063 agendas. We're grateful to you for your intervention. I'm next joined by another distinguished expert, a highly experienced economist, Dr. Hafez Ghanem. He is a distinguished fellow at the Development Finance Lab of the Paris School of Economics, while at the same time a senior fellow at the Policy Center for the New South in Rabat, Morocco, research fellow at the Economic Research Forum in Cairo, and a non-resident senior fellow at the Brookings Institution in Washington, D.C. We also know Dr. Ghanem as a former vice president of the World Bank at various stages of his career, responsible for different parts of Africa, and also an assistant director general responsible for economic and social development departments within the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization. Now, my question to Dr. Ghanem will be on the obstacles and the prospects. So that our new narrative is focused on turning these obstacles into, or the challenges into opportunities, in expanding Africa's prospects. So in your opinion, sir, what are the primary obstacles and prospects involved in effectively harnessing water and energy resources to accelerate sustainable industrialization and to foster inclusive economic transformation across Africa? Which exemplary case studies or best practices come to your mind from within Africa, or given your broad experience from other regions, that could offer valuable insights for Africa in this respect? The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Utku. It's a pleasure to be with you today. And I'll try to be brief. I'll talk first about water, then energy, and then I will conclude by making a plea for a Pan-African approach to both water and energy. Water, we all know what the obstacles are. We in Africa are hit worse by climate change than any other region in the world in terms of the impact of climate change on access to water in Africa. 1/3 of the global drylands are in Africa. We have more than 525 million Africans living in drylands. And we have seen the increase in droughts. We have seen the increase in food insecurity resulting from those droughts. We have seen how that has also impacted migration in the continent, especially for pastoralists who are moving. The challenge is huge. I mean, just a couple of numbers. The desert, the Sahara, is growing by 48 kilometers every year. So this is the real number about desertification in our continent. There's a severe degradation of our river basins. The Nile basin has been degraded by 42%. The Senegal River basin has been degraded by 51%. The Niger by 50%. So this is the challenge. Now, we need to change this into an opportunity, and we need to invest much more in our water resources, because as many people said, we have enough water on the continent, but we need to use it better. And there, I would focus more on doing more for agriculture, which is the biggest consumer of water on the continent. We need to expand irrigated cropland and keep our agriculture less dependent on rain and rainfed, because we know that the rains are becoming more and more erratic. And we have the possibility to do that. We need also to include more using more technology and more drought-resistant and climate-resistant technologies, whether it is in terms of seeds, in terms of the kind of irrigation that we use. And you asked me, Utku, to talk about, to mention what countries can we look at that have been very successful in dealing with water scarcity. And I tried to find some countries on the continent. I have to admit, I was not impressed with any. So there are 2 countries in the world that actually are very impressive in dealing with water scarcity. One is Israel, and the other is the Netherlands. And we want to look into using the technologies that have been developed there to deal with water scarcity. Just as a footnote, I've been focusing on the agriculture part of the water because we are all feeling also the issue of food security linked to the war in Ukraine as well. But also there is urban issues. and there is urban demand for water, which is exceeding urban supply. And we have many of our water companies and water utilities that are facing financial crises and financial issues. And so again, this is, I mean, as the Chinese say, every crisis, they have the same word for crisis as opportunity. So maybe this is an opportunity for us to look at both our use of urban water, improving our urban utilities, and also moving our agriculture into a much higher level of sophistication and technology. Now I'll move to energy, and many people mentioned that we have 600 million Africans who don't have access to electricity today. This is 43% of our population. And actually, for those of us who have been living most of our lives in Africa, we know that even when we have access to electricity, the quality of service is often very erratic. And in many cases, and especially for industries, you have to rely on generators, diesel generators. I lived in many cities on the continent, and I'm not going to mention their names, where you could not survive without the generator. And that adds to the cost. Well, it adds to the cost for individuals, but also it adds to the cost of businesses. How can our industry be competitive? So it's not just an issue of access to electricity that we should be worrying about, but it's also the issue of the quality of access to make sure that our industries can be competitive. Now, I believe that in the area of power, we have a huge opportunity because of new technologies that are coming up. In a sense, the reaction to climate change and the development of green technologies could be an opportunity for Africa to achieve universal access to good quality power. And so the two points here that are very important. The first point is that we need to be thinking outside of the box and not always thinking about expanding the grid. With solar power, with wind power, we have many opportunities of achieving access through off-grid solutions, through mini-grid solutions. And that will help us reach to the, especially the rural areas and faraway areas. The second point is that we also cannot depend solely on the public sector. The amount of investment that is needed is huge. So we have to develop more of a private sector approach and ways of getting the private sector involved. And there, I believe that, and when I talk private sector, I don't just talk about foreign private sector. In Africa, we have many big businesses and many big entrepreneurs who should be encouraged to enter that. Now, the problem has been that the power sector is usually seen as high risk because you typically sell power to the grid, to the government, and governments are not often good payers. So what we need to do is really develop better systems for risk mitigation for the private sector, especially in power. And that system of risk mitigation should not just be focused. I mean, you know, if you look at the World Bank's MEGA, for example, they will only guarantee cross-border investments. But we also need to provide the same risk mitigation facilities to domestic investors. So that this is an area where we need to work more. So now, to conclude, I really believe that we are facing huge challenges, but also it's a great opportunities, whether in terms of achieving universal quality access to power or achieving or really taking our agriculture to a higher level of technology and development. But this, not each of our countries can do it on its own. We need to develop an Africa-wide approach. In the power sector, I've seen there are very interesting developments. I'm thinking of the West Africa Power Pool, for example, and also the East Africa Power Pool. We need to develop those interconnections and really focus on investments that would be useful and used by several countries, and it needs to be done at the continental level. Same thing on water resources, whether it is for managing cross-border water. I was thinking of the Nile or the Niger River, or actually also developing watersheds, developing irrigation systems that do not need to be affected by borders. And in that sense, and that's my last point, we should be able to capitalize on the Continental Free Trade Agreement, and by allowing for greater trade both in power and also in agricultural products in order to ensure the best use of water resources. Thank you very much again, and thank you for listening to me.
Well, thank you very much for your very thorough and detailed answer. You've addressed every single angle that I presented to you in the question, and have done it very comprehensively. I was taking notes, and I've seen so many entry points, both with our works as well as the panelists that will come after you. Your emphasis in a Pan-African approach, but also on the importance of the domestic resource mobilization and the same opportunities being afforded to domestic private sector investors is something that has resonated with us quite a lot as you were speaking. And I'm also glad that you mentioned urbanization, because we have an expert from UN Habitat, and this is one of the areas that we are going to go to right after your intervention. But my colleagues have requested that I make a small housekeeping announcement at the same time. We have placed the link in our chat box to a brief survey, which will take about 10 to 15 minutes. This is very important for our future event planning, and we would like to receive feedback from all participants. And if you could spare a few moments for us, this would create a very good baseline for our future work, and we would really like to hear your feedback. So please take a few minutes to complete the event survey and give us your feedback. Now, allow me to introduce Ms. Devi Hanum. She is an expert with UN Habitat, Urban Basic Services section. She covers the areas of water, sanitation, and health, the acronym known as WASH. She is a civil engineer from Gadjah University, Yogyakarta, Indonesia, and then has a Master of Science from the Delft University, Netherlands, and has decades of working experience in the fields of sanitation, wastewater management, and environmental management in general. And she has also extensive experience on the ground in Africa. So as we were planning this event, one of the issues that we've come across throughout our discussion, focusing on water and energy issues, was the importance of urbanization. And also we are at a nice interjection as the SDG 11 is being reviewed this year. So throughout this discussion so far, I'm moving to your question. We have been focusing on water and energy as inputs to the productive process in general, as well as Africa's sustainable industrialization in particular. However, as the SDGs are all interlinked, there are significant linkages between these topics and Africa's sustainable urbanization. Could you elaborate on themes that we discussed in today's meeting from the perspective of sustainable cities and communities, and if possible, by giving some examples from your recent projects, collaborations, and partnerships that you've fostered to that effect? Ms. Hanum, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for my time. So it's honor to be here with all of you to discuss on the African Day today. So when we are talking about the human settlement and urbanization, so I would like to emphasize that Africa has the fastest urban population growth. So projections from now until 2050, there will be gross populations increase double, and 2/3 of the populations will be at the urban area. So we are facing now, when we are discussing from the previous speaks, we know that we are lacking on the public services and also the infrastructures. Now, even we are more on the largest lack of the public services and infrastructures. It is creating pressures on energy and freshwater resources. So this is the demand, and also pollution and greenhouse gases. Now we have to discuss further, because when we are discussing cities, there are dilemma on the perspective. So cities are a main creator of the economic wealth, with 70% of the GDP is coming from the cities. But the urban activities consume 70% of the global primary energy. Hence, 75% of the urban activities contribute to the greenhouse gases emissions. So we have to explore the opportunity how we can tackle the energy demands and also reducing the pollutions. So this, when we are talking about the energy, we are also discussing on the water, and the implications is, of course, sanitation and wastewater management, how you call it, treatment, distributions, collections, and disposals are using the energy. So for the next 3 decades, if we are talking about the demands, there is the increase of the water demands predicted 50 to 70%. So that is 1.9 billion urban dwellers will live with the seasonal water shortage. So this starting point in the final push for the SDGs 6, 7, and 11. And also related SDGs, so that we are already in the middle of the SDGs. We know that we are facing challenges to achieve the goals, but there is still a time to have another alternative, and also innovations and interventions to somehow getting closer to the goals. So I don't want to discuss too much about the climate change and weather changes, impacts, and everything on cities, because Dr. Haves is already explaining how the cities are devastating on the effect on the climate change, and how many millions and billions investments are lost on this. However, for us, UN Habitats is promoting holistic approach to urbanizations and integrated urban and territorial planning and spatial development practices, enhance inclusive and interdisciplinary solutions based in interdependency on water and energy. So we have been working with several government and also institutions, especially the local government, because we are focusing more into the local initiative to achieve the goal. So if we are talking about the example, there is a project, Water for Africa City Program. It started in 1999, that 17 cities supported to manage urban water crisis and protect water sources from city pollutions. So this is the 7 cities in Africa. Maybe I can explain later if I have time. And then another project is about the Lake Victoria Water and Sanitation Initiative regional programs in 15 towns in 5 partner states of the East African countries. So the 15 towns updated water, sanitations, and solid waste management for their improvement. This also enhanced the energy efficiency that over 840,000 urban residents is benefited from the project. So another example that Dr. James is already discussing about the peer learning. So we have the water operator partnerships under the GWOPA, the Global Water Operations Partnership Alliance, with secretariat support exchange peer between the 2 or more water operators on non-profit basis, objectives strengthening capacities, enhance performance, and also provide better services, nurtures since inception, the offer for 100 water operators already joining the alliance. So another example on the project that we have been doing, there was the energy audit to improve efficiency in water supply. So this reduced the cost of the water supply. When we have done the audits in Ethiopia, Nigeria, Ghana, and in Accra, the replacements of the water pump and good housekeeping increase the quantity of the water supply and energy reductions up to 30%. So this is also a good example that can be also done by the local governments. That's a simple audit, and also improving the housekeeping will improve the energy productions, and of course reduce the consumptions. And
in the interest of time, can we conclude?
Yeah, I think in conclusions here, I'm actually getting there. In conclusions here, we have been discussing since the beginning that the Africa has a huge potentials in energy and water, but why we are still facing a trouble. So we have to explore what is the available resources in Africa to improve the demands and also reducing the consumptions and productions. And I think the takeaway messages that I would like to emphasize here is that the call for more sustainable renewable energy for Africa at all levels implicates will be the financial mechanisms for infrastructures. This is also in line with the Dr. Ahape's points. And the second is the integrated urban planning on energy and water management and wastewater management also will be improved. And then the last one is innovative governance system with more roles of local governments, as well as leverage local financing at the city level to boost basic service productions and also provisions. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hano, for this comprehensive intervention, and also by drawing on these linkages with very active projects and pragmatic examples. That has really enriched our discussion today. And now I'm going to take the discussion in another direction. We have 2 dynamic youth representatives, and they have been waiting patiently until it is their turn to speak. And I'm going to actually, given that we can always rely on them to handle things on the spot, I'm going to put a little bit more weight on their shoulders with their permission, because we've been receiving excellent questions on the chat box. So while I'm going to go to Ray next and briefly introduce him, I've already shared the question with him, but there are a few additional aspects that came up in the chat. You may have followed those as well. And I'm going to ask him to briefly comment on these issues if possible. But let's first go through the brief introduction. Mr. Ray Kiliho is a Tanzanian professional with over 9 years of experience in the youth development space, conservation, and climate action. And he is currently head of programs at the Pan-African Youth Union's Office of the Secretary General. We've heard from the Secretary General briefly at the beginning of our meeting. We've had connection challenges, unfortunately. Hopefully it will not affect Ray now. This Pan-African Youth Union is an apex agency for the youth of African Union, which federates Article 12 youth institutions across Africa as mandated by the heads of states resolutions. And he's also a trained architecture technologist specialized in resource efficient buildings and green cities for about 6 years. So he's got the right experience and the exposure to handle the question that we are gonna share with him. Now, officially, his question was the following: how can African nations capitalize on renewable energy sources and innovative water management techniques to bolster their industrial expansion while mitigating adverse environmental consequences? And as a representative of the Pan-African Youth Union, sorry, what would you say are some of the ways in which young people in Africa can involve themselves to a greater extent in these processes? Now, before giving the word to you, I would like to complement this question with two more issues. One question that came up in the chat is, what is the AU doing to bolster youth employment especially in the areas of blue economy, and what can be done more? This was one question that came up in the chat. And then another question that came up in the chat in reference to Mr. Pedro's excellent intervention at the beginning, speaking about transformative leadership. The question is, how can Africa's youth have this transformative leadership and the role model role, so to speak, passed on to them, and how could they be part of that transformative leadership, especially observing the existing leadership in Africa and taking the best parts of that and moving that forward. So Ray, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Moderator Utku, and Excellencies, distinguished participants. Greetings. On behalf of the Pan-African Youth Union, it's a pleasure to address this subject of great importance. I wish to address this on a perspective of young people. Also to mention that we have mandatory platforms where we consult with national youth councils and youth organizations. And what can African nations and states do to capitalize and leverage on renewable energy and sustainable water management? So from our consultations, at least 5 things have come to become as pressing issues. And these are what young people, I think, African nations should do. Number 1 is policy and regulatory frameworks. So African countries can incentivize, the sector of renewable energy and sustainable water management, and these can attract more adoption from the uptake side and also from the investment side. So it's very important to have policies and frameworks that are pro-adoption of these technologies. This is very important. The second aspect is infrastructure, investment in infrastructure. So African nations can attract local and international investments to develop renewable energy infrastructure, such as solar, of course, wind farms, hydropower. And this infrastructure would act as a catalyst to accelerate the domestic uptake of such investments in the scaling of the sectors. And so it's very important for governments and states to really invest on the basic infrastructure in energy, with, of course, the availability and alignment of policy and frameworks. The third important component from the youth consultations has been importance of capacity building and technology transfer. Investing in training programs and knowledge sharing initiatives can enhance the technical skills of young people and, of course, professionals in renewable energy and water management sectors. So encouraging technology transfer partnerships with developed nations can facilitate access to advanced technologies and practices. This is also very important. The fourth component from the youth is the essence of public-private partnerships. it's very important that governments also see a true, potential in the private sector, and especially the young people. Young people have their issues, which needs to be addressed to make them very capable in tapping into this into the sector. So there's very much important in promoting partnerships with the private sector, with the civil society, and very specifically with young people to be able to capitalize on these elements. The fifth part, the last but not least, is the importance of research and development. Promoting research and development activities in renewable energy and water management can lead to indigenous technological advancements. So encouraging universities and research institutions to focus on clean energy and sustainable water solutions can drive local innovation. Now, what can young people do on this age to really support governments and, of course, the acceleration of these sectors? So it was also very important to understand that young people are not homogeneous. So it's a demographic that has a widespread dividend. So just as they have young people have different needs, also we have different capabilities. So number one is young people can take advantage in the entrepreneurship and innovation sector by taking advantage of green jobs that are available in advancing and promoting these solutions, both in renewable energy and as well as in sustainable water management. Secondly, young people can take an opportunity to educate and get the relevant skills that can render us very effective in tapping into this into the sectors, renewable sectors, and then these skills are very available through vocational education, training opportunities. There's also this knowledge and skills through digital platforms. We've been challenged that young people spend much time on social media interacting instead of course, acquiring essential knowledge. So young people can take this opportunity of accessibility and access to technology to really educate ourselves. The third component is young people can have a role in advocating for and raising awareness around renewable energies and, of course, sustainable water management. Also engaging with our policymakers to really enhance the importance of adopting these measures into our economies. And lastly, is the importance of collaboration and knowledge exchange. So young people can really take advantage of engaging in international networks to really, we've heard about peer learning. So it's also important for African young people to learn from our peers in different regions to really adopt the transfer of that gap, engaging in education exchange and, of course, information exchange. Now, coming to the question, as has been addressed, what could be done to really make sure that the transformational leadership for young people. I think it's also important while there are individuals as leaders that have capabilities to become good leaders, but there's a strong need for Africa to push youth mentorship. Mentorship is very important because when we are young, we tend to be very ambitious, but sometimes we tend also to be very vulnerable and may not have certain values and capabilities. So there's a need for guidance, deliberate guidance and mentorship to African young leaders by learning and exposing young people into negotiations, into processes. We are very grateful to the Office of the Special Advisor on Africa and the ECA for really working hand in hand with the Pan-African Youth Union and, of course, engaging young people in these processes. And I cannot remember the other question was, but moving forward, I think from the Pan-African Youth Union, we really are trying to bridge these gaps, and we acknowledge we're not angels as young people. So we acknowledge that we have our challenges, but we are very much open to new learning, to collaboration, and to really push the boundaries of realizing the Africa we want, and of course, achieving the goals of the Agenda 2063. I thank you, and I'll be happy to follow up with any remarks moving forward.
Thank you very much, Ray. This has been a very well-structured response to a difficult question, and you've given us a lot of food for thought. So we'll certainly follow up with you. Now I have a challenge in front of me. I have one more panelist that we have to hear from, and then I'm going to give the word to Ambassador Fatima Chiari for her closing remarks. So our next speaker, I'm going to request from her to speak very briefly. She is actually a very young and dynamic entrepreneur. Her name is Barbara Nakaro. She is the director of Nature's Love Packaging Company, which you understand she started with her sister, and she provides a solution to the community by making sustainable packaging tools to solve the problem of poor waste management of single-use plastics at individual level and also for businesses. So in doing so, she promotes a sustainable lifestyle really from the ground up with African developed and inspired solutions. She's also a council member of the Independent Continental Youth Advisory Council on the African Continental Free Trade Area, helping SMEs and businesses. Well, if you are still with us, Barbara, thank you very much for your patience, for staying on board. And let me give you your question. It is, we were asking you to comment on the ways in which partnerships, alliances, and collaborative initiatives could bolster Africa's endeavors to tap into water and energy resources. Excuse me, there is some background noise. If everyone except Barbara, if you could mute your mics, that would be great. Thank you. So again, the question is, what partnerships, alliances, and collaborative initiatives could bolster Africa's endeavors to tap into water and energy resources for sustainable industrialization and inclusive economic transformation? And in that, we would like to ask you to speak about the role of the private sector and perhaps give examples from your own business and other businesses that you are familiar with. Barbara, the floor is yours, but with my apologies, I'm going to ask you to structure your intervention to no more than 3 minutes. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Utuku. Well, thank you so much for that brief and elaborative introduction. Well, I'll go straight to the questions. So we can foster partnerships or boost Africa's endeavors to tap into the water and energy resources by having industrial zones. So together, the private sector, the SMEs, and the government can build economic zones to address the natural resources and challenges through having the economic zones, like I've told you. And also, my second point is we can have bankable solutions, like low interest schemes, by the way, which enable SMEs and households to acquire renewable energies like solar. For example, Equity Bank here in Uganda has a collaboration with solar suppliers to sell solar energy to businesses and also households. Institutes like universities can avail human resource which can be used in local communities to train on how to adapt to renewable energies and also how to use the renewable sources. We can also address the waste streams towards the circular economy. This can be done by the private sector and also the industries through following the national authority regulations. And this helps protect the water bodies and also our soils, because most of the waste that we have goes into our soils, because only 6% of the waste is able to be reused or maybe collected for recycling or be disposed of well here in Uganda. We also we can also empower youths and women. We can also, the ministries can work with SMEs and also the private sector bodies to engage in research projects like the new Uganda's electronic cooking national strategy. Yes, this is done by UMEME in collaboration with the Ministry of Energy and the Mineral Development. They are trying to see how households can adapt to electronic pressure cookers, which will boost the use of renewable energy. And also collaboration or partnerships can be used to create green jobs for women, youths, and also for marginalized groups. Like in Uganda, we have briquette making. This is done by one of my colleagues called Nantongo of Smart Kitchen. She gets water hydrants and turns them into briquettes, which can be used for home cooking. And also, they can also adapt to cottage businesses in making paper bags through partnerships that can be possible. Furthermore, tax bodies, by giving subsidies to SMEs and also creating reward schemes like on the World Environment Day, the rewards can be given to people that are into green jobs, and also those who encourage the use of energy. Yes. So the second question is about
Barbara, can you come to a conclusion, because we are running out of time, and unfortunately our interpreters have to stop working, so we have to bring the meeting to a quick conclusion.
Right.
Thank you.
I'm concluding. What the private sector will do, what I will do, I will encourage the private sector and also empower in skilling local communities at grassroots level, e.g. volunteering opportunities, which can assist on having industries made from green energy resources, and also empower green job making, and also boost responsible consumption among citizens of Africa, and also encourage production. A company can decide to stop using single-use plastic bags, which serves as an example to other companies and also individuals. And also we can work with campaigns to boost the use of sustainable solutions, like the Green Acacia, like we have a partnership with the Acacia Green Life Foundation, which we work with to encourage the use of green lifestyles or sustainable living amongst Africans. And with those points, I request to submit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Barbara, for this intervention. These are all very interesting projects. I know you've shared some slides with me earlier as well, and we'll display these things and share these with the participants as we go along. This brings us to the end of our panel discussion. We've only scratched the surface of a very, very comprehensive theme. I would like to use this opportunity to thank all our panelists for making the time to join us this morning or afternoon or early evening, depending on where you're joining us from. We do not take this for granted, and we are extremely grateful to you for those insights that you have shared with us. And this type of event, of course, takes a lot of doing behind the scenes. So please allow me to use this opportunity to thank our technical teams and all our co-organizers who have worked tirelessly before and during this event to deliver this event to you. With all my thanks and gratitude for being with us years and years on end, I'm now going to pass the word on to Her Excellency Ms. Ambassador Fatima Kiari, the permanent observer of the African Union to the United Nations, to deliver closing remarks. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Utku. And I'll also join you in thanking everyone behind the scenes that made this meeting a success. Honorable Ministers, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's truly a pleasure for me to join you this morning. It's been a very interesting session, and I want to really underline my thanks, and especially to the Office of the UN Office as a Special Advisor, and recognize in particular the leadership and commitment of my dear sister USG Duarte, and of course your amazing team. Our partnership with your office is fundamental in moving our common priorities and objectives forward. I'd like to also thank our other organizing partners, UNDP, UNECA, and of course IDEP for their engagement in making this meeting possible. And as we close off Africa Day at HLPF 2023, I hope that all the participants feel as enriched as I am by the wealth of knowledge that has been shared, and the brilliant analysis and recommendations made, and the passion that has permeated this entire session. Ladies and gentlemen, as you're aware, since its establishment 5 years ago, Africa Day at the HLPF has successfully brought together a number of stakeholders, policymakers, experts, representatives from both the public and private sector, CSOs, partners, and it has been a forum for exchange, for sharing of experience, but also a forum for us to chart a collective course towards accelerating the implementation of Agenda 2030 and Agenda 2063. And today we've heard from high-level policymakers presenting their national experiences. We've heard from seasoned African experts providing in-depth analysis on interlinkages between water, energy, and industrialization. And we've examined innovative ways and pathways to leverage these connections for sustainable development. And of course, we've heard from the youth calling for prioritizing their voice in decision-making and to invest more in education and increase employment of young women and men. And in all the statements, presentations, and interventions made today, I think there's an underlying dedication to build a brighter future for the African continent and the world as a whole. And we've learned from both successes and challenges, but also identified some opportunities that can be leveraged. So in a nutshell, it is clear that the path to Africa's industrialization is more than a matter of economic growth. It's a matter of survival, progression, and dignity for all our people. And the prospects of the entire continent in this century are strongly dependent on how our countries, as well as, of course, our regional economic communities, prepare for industrialization and global competition. So as underlined earlier, 2023 is a pivotal year. It's a decade since the adoption of Agenda 2063 and halfway through Agenda 2030. And with the fundamental challenge of financing, it is clear that we need to act collectively to foster debt sustainability, scale up investment, boost climate finance for adaptation, and lay the foundation for a reformed international financial architecture with African countries at its core. So as I conclude, I believe that our meeting today was an opportunity to assess the progress, reiterate our commitment towards achieving the world we want, and forge ahead with renewed determination towards not only continental transformation, but also global development. We may be off track where the SDGs are concerned, but that also means that we need to recalibrate and address the core issues and external shocks that affects us in terms of meeting our targets. So as we leave this meeting, let's carry with us the spirit of this discussion. And let us embrace the power of collaboration, innovation, and inclusivity to achieve our ambitious goals, both the SDGs and Agenda 2063. And I hope that the outcome report and recommendations that are coming out of this meeting will help us in terms of charting better paths for the future to get closer to realizing our shared vision for the Africa we want and the Africa that the world needs. Let me conclude once again by thanking each and every one of you for your participation. for your engagement, and I encourage you to stay focused in achieving our common objectives. Thank you for your kind attention, and I now declare the meeting closed.